And welcome. I'm going to say welcome back. I should say welcome because this is the first day of really the rest of this pretty incredible Dead by Daylight mobile tournament. We have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
A lot of things have already kind of happened. So welcome back. Of course, I'm one of your shoutcasters, one of your hosts. My name is Dylan. I'm a Fog Whisperer. I have 4,000 hours in this game, and I'm joined here by the illustrious.
Illustrious is kind of a strong word, but I appreciate the compliment. I'm Steven, a longtime Dead by Daylight community member, have about 2,500 hours, small-time hobbyist content creator, and it is my absolute pleasure to be here today.
Today we have just really 2 matches. We were supposed to have 3 matches, but some things have happened. And so today we're taking a look at just some of the, really some of the top part of our bracket, right? Who's going to go on into the semis and grands. And then we have the losers bracket. So looking at that now, we have had to make some adjustments to the bracket. We have 4 a.m. versus RSK, which is what we're looking at today. My money's on RSK.
Yeah, RSK has been doing some pretty impressive performances so far in this tournament, and I am very excited for this match.
I'm super here for it
because 4am did a really good job also in their I believe their match on, I believe it was like day 1. They were the first match of the entire tournament.
Yeah.
And they had a really fantastic performance.
They did. They had like a great opening. So I don't know. Yeah, I could. I'm just going with the safe pick here, I think. Of course, we have endgame. They are actually advancing forward. Some tumultuous happenings with LF that is resulting in a DQ or a loss. So that means that is changing our losers bracket today. The endgame versus LF. Because LF is DQ'd, Rarity actually gets to move forward. And so we're really going to see what happens between 4 a.m. and RSK, and whoever comes out of that goes right to the losers bracket, goes against BBB, and I don't know, who do you think? I mean, I just really want to root for BBB as an underdog. But
yeah, especially like getting them sort of like back into the tournament, their performance versus Pulse. Like, I'm very excited to see, honestly, where all of these teams are going to go. You know, like, we do have to be impartial as the casting desk. But honestly, I'm excited to see some phenomenal Dead by Daylight. I am very interested in seeing, because this is something I've experienced in the past. I used to play competitive Rocket League back in the day. And one of the very interesting phenomenons that you saw was how much of an impact going into your game off the back of another game is.
Yeah.
And that applies to both wins, losses, and just like your general sort of warmness for the match, right?
Sort of momentum or lack thereof.
Exactly. So like I would be very curious, because whoever is the winner of 4 a.m. versus RSK is just going to move on. They're not going to play again today. But the team that loses that match is going to have to go up against BBB in the lower bracket.
Yeah.
And so I really would be very interested to see, it's a bit of an unscientific experiment we can do here today, how maybe that loss will affect maybe their mentality, maybe their gameplay, because it can be a little bit difficult to come back from a loss like that. But, you know, with a strong mental that you have to have in these sort of competitive environments, you know, I'm excited to see those players hopefully have that strong mental, come back from that loss, and do their best in the next game.
Yeah, it's really interesting we talk about this, and you know, what we've seen and what we've pointed out last weekend, if you missed it, let me give you the recap. The teams that have done the best are the teams that are willing to change their strategy or adapt in the moment, right? Instead of just pursuing that same sort of, you know, we see spirits that are continuously doing the same mind games that are not working, things of that nature, right? And so if you take a heavy loss, you go down to losers. Are you a team that can adapt and go, you know what, we need to go ahead and change up? So I don't know. Maybe they're anxious and they blunder in the losers. Maybe they light a fire and they get going. So.
Yeah, and that ability to sort of like look at your last loss, recognize the mistakes, but not get down on yourself about it. To recognize those mistakes as opportunities to improve and to grow as players and as a team is so important.
Exactly.
And so for our first match of the day, we are going to be visiting the Blood Lodge. We've seen a lot of Blood Lodge in this tournament.
Yeah.
It's definitely a bit on the bigger side, which is why we are seeing Billy banned on both sides here. So I'm expecting an Oni. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of Billy and Oni, so I think if one's not there, I think the other's a pretty safe bet for this match.
Yeah, what's really interesting is Blood Lodge. This version of Blood Lodge, right? Because now this is an old version of Blood Lodge, and what we're looking at is a map that's wide open spaces, right? But it is a big map. So in some cases, it's hard for killers that don't have speed to navigate it effectively before all the objectives are done for the survivors. Simultaneously, if you're a hillbilly in this case, you get around the map very quickly, and because it's wide open, you kind of just see your targets pretty fast, right? There's not a lot for them to hide against, and I think that's why we're seeing those Billy bans is the speed, and then once he's in there, most of the strong tiles are on the outside edges, and once those pallets are gone, are you going to win that?
Yeah, I mean, really, all you ever get in the middle of this version of Blood Lodge is just a couple of those filler pallets.
Yeah.
And sometimes you even get a hill, too, which
yeah,
when you get like a mid-map hill tile, that takes away a filler. That effectively takes away a filler pallet and moves that to the other hill spawn on the edge of the map where the hill isn't.
Exactly.
And so then that sort of just further concentrates those resources on the outside of the map, and survivors are going to have to cross back and forth to get unhooks, to travel from gen to gen. You can't just stay around the outside of the map because taking the scenic route wastes a lot of time.
Hills are always so interesting because hills could be something that hinder both the survivor and the killer, right? But when you're a hillbilly, especially this version of hillbilly that we
With
keep
that turning,
is oh, they're on the other side of the hill, boop, 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 done. We made it. We're here. What's the problem, right? And so, yeah, I think that's why we're also seeing some of those Billy bans. If it were a different map, something more complicated, Haddonfield or something like that, that would maybe dissuade Billy, then we would maybe see a different set of bans thrown out for the other teams.
Yeah, and we actually did almost see a Haddonfield pick last week, which I have to say that was going to be interesting. Unfortunately, we didn't actually get to play out that match.
No.
So I will have to live the rest of my life not knowing what comp DBD on Haddonfield looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
I will be tormented by that lack of knowledge for decades.
You know, that's the strategy of the way this tournament's set up. For those of you that don't know, this is your first time maybe coming in, is, you know, really the way it works is a team gets to pick whether they, you know, kill or survive, and the other team gets to pick the map. And then from there, they get to pick a ban for the other team, right? So Team A will pick whether the other team gets to play Oni or Billy or Nurse or whatever, and then vice versa. And
so
as
each team is going to ban. So each team bans one killer
Yes.
for their opponents,
Yes.
but they are allowed to play that killer.
Exactly. And so really what we're going to see, especially as we move on, you know, we're going to play this first map, and then they'll swatch sides. So it'll be, you know, okay, map 1A, map 1B, and then we go to the next map, and then another ban comes out, and that's really going to start narrowing down the pool and making the map picks a little bit different. But I don't know, for me, I would pick a map that limits, like I said, Billy off the map already, you know, or something like that maybe.
Yeah, though it is important to keep in mind, though, that you also have to play on that map as killer. And a lot of those maps that are really difficult for Billy are generally pretty difficult maps for killer in general.
Yeah, unless you're Nurse.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen
nobody has been.
I know, we've seen a surprisingly small number of nurses. I think throughout this whole tournament bracket so far, we have seen 3 nurses, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
maybe
no, because we saw
Nurse 1.
We saw Nurse in the very first match.
Yeah.
All the way back on day 1. On Wrecker's Yard.
Yes.
We saw Nurse on Rancid Abattoir on, I believe it was Saturday of last weekend.
Did we see 2 nurses on Abattoir?
Yes. I think we saw 2 nurses on Abattoir. Oh, it was 2 were on Records. 2 were on Records.
Nice.
And then 1 was on Abattoir.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So we've, you know, compared to the amount of spirits, I think we've actually seen more Onis and Billies than even Spirits. Spirits got a high pick rate
At the early stages of the tournament, yeah. But as we've been moving into like these sort of later stages, we've seen Oni and Billy, I mean, perform much more consistently, first off.
Yep.
And I think partly because of that more consistent performance, like maybe like an Oni in his power is frankly terrifying. That is, an Oni in his power is the strongest killer in the game, in my opinion. Like the level of mobility, the insta down, the pallet breaks, like just so much lethality in that package.
Yep.
Which is why it's time limited, right? He only gets a minute at base to use that power.
Yep.
And he has to also hit the survivors to start that blood flowing, absorb those orbs, and build his power. So that's the sort of cost of that level, of that sort of power level. You need that build up. You need that downtime.
Yeah.
Whereas like we saw sort of Billy is that bit more consistent, right? Like he's always got the power.
Cooldown, no need to build up.
Yeah, he's just always on. This is why we've seen so many Billy bans.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, whereas like Spirit has, over the course of the match, sort of a similar amount of downtime to Oni. Like with all of the time cooling down from her power and like sort of building that gauge back up. But at the same time, she sort of leaves herself maybe a little bit more open to the mind games from the survivors, especially since we've been seeing such a high prevalence of Iron Will.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing when you look at Spirit versus anyone else is, the amount of downtime I think is dispersed throughout a match differently.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, the fact of the matter for Spirit is that like people healing really hurts her.
Yeah.
Oni doesn't care. You can heal, but then he's an ability, and then he just smashes your face. So there's something really interesting that I think and that's I think why we saw a Wraith last week that was just so impressive, was getting downs and just ignoring the health state of that survivor, not having to go for hit
downs,
and then and just going for instant downs and hooks, and really that setting the pace for survivors I think has really made Spirit quite risky.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember right, that Wraith's build was Make Your Choice, Ruin, Haunted Grounds, and Noed, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, almost all exposed.
And the thing is that when we were watching that game play out, it really, to a certain extent, like the stars aligned for that build to work.
Yeah, it was risky.
Like that is a very all or nothing kind of build. And like we saw the Haunted Ground pop, followed by the Haunted Ground I think got him 2 downs, followed immediately by Make Your Choice, and then the Noed, and then things just kind of got a little messy in the end game. A couple of mistakes were made on the survivors end, and I believe that was a 2K.
I think that came out to a 3.
Yeah, 3K?
Yeah, maybe. The big thing, for the Wraith was like being able to get a down on a Meg who had just been unhooked not long ago, and then go back for the Make Your Choice target, and really forcing himself into these perks, and then people dared to touch Haunted Grounds, and then the snowball, right? Yeah. So it's been very interesting to see the exposed or the instant down going all the way up to the top. So we're actually, we said it, and that's the caster curse. We're actually seeing a nurse come out today. This is going to be interesting. RSK playing Survivor first. And so, I don't know. I'm not sure what to expect out of this.
Yeah, well, it's important to keep in mind that 4AM's nurse was that first nurse we were talking about that had such a dominant performance on Wrecker's Yard.
Yeah, double range.
Yeah, that double range is extremely lethal. This sort of really does a good job of mitigating the size of a map like Blood Lodge.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get probably 2/3 of the way across the map with one blink.
So the big thing here is going to be how well do the survivors hide to not even initiate a chase.
Yeah, the early game is going to be so crucial here. Not letting her get in a chase early, just denying her that early pressure. I'm assuming there will be Corrupt in play, so letting the Corrupt run out.
And then from there, it's going to be, do they break the 3-gen? Because we know there's probably a main building 3-gen that's going to come into play here.
That's pretty likely. Because, there's always that one on the front porch, and then there's usually one in either of those adjacent corners.
Yep, exactly. We start off here. We've seen the survivors, kind of what we called there, going to be a little bit stealthy, really just going to wait, try to not, we see them kind of cramped up against each other, really.
Yeah, it's honestly a bit of an unlucky spawn for the early game for our survivors, because you can sort of get anything from all 4 survivors together to all 4 survivors split up in different corners of the map. And so seeing all of the survivors all sort of bunched up in this corner purely by chance, they're doing a great job of mitigating the effect of that. But it's definitely a little bit spooky in the early game, because if you get caught, that could be a bit of a feeding frenzy if you're not careful.
Exactly. You could see definitely like one down into another chase and really just delaying those survivors from actually getting started on anything. And, we do see the nurse perspective here. We do see Corrupt Intervention, Ruin, Pop Goes the Weasel, and Tinkerer, which is, for nurse, all reliable, right, coming home.
Yeah, I believe this was the same build. Oh, and they should have spotted the Kate there. So this is going to be our first chase. Yeah, there it comes.
Yep, and early first, good patience on that second blink there.
Yeah, I don't even know if they used the second blink, actually. That looked like that sort of moment where you start to fatigue and then swing right at the end.
Could be, yeah.
Oh, good double backs from the Kate.
Yeah, great job from the Kate. Did she double back and throw, or did she just?
It
really
doesn't look like the pallet's still up, which honestly is smart. It's pretty difficult to actually get value from a dropped pallet against a nurse, and it can often be better for the nurse than the survivor having you locked in that animation of vaulting.
Exactly. Really good job here from the Kate, really juicing, really the big deal there is the Kate did go down, and we noticed that the Kate does not have Unbreakable in that moment, but that Kate really wasted a good enough amount of time. We see a little bit of gen progress on the board right now.
And also, look, you see her team is there's like a pretty tight 3-gen over sort of on that left side of the map. And you can see that her team is very much just getting right on those gens. And I think one of the things that the Kate did a really good job of was keeping the chase in that same area and buying space for her team to spread out a bit across the map.
Absolutely. Now, what we're already seeing, which is something really worth noting, is Hex Ruin. Hex Ruin is already out of play. It's gone. And there's the yoink coming from our nurse. What an incredible... That was incredible. That was last second, I felt like, actually.
Yeah, that was a bit of a risky play from Ace to do that, because I feel like at this point in the match, our nurse, she knows that there's only one gen above 75% progress, because Tinkerer has only activated on one gen.
Exactly.
So she knows she's perfectly safe to just sort of sit here and apply pressure. Oh, and especially because she saw the Meg as well.
Ooh, Meg taking that hit early.
I could see her taking this chase, potentially. Oh, never mind.
She's going to maybe...
Yeah, just defend those hooks.
Let's see what happens. Yeah, this is a big deal right now. Tinkerer, let's see if she gets this real fast.
Yeah, see, and the thing is, I don't know if Meg can... Good job, Meg's going to trade. Okay.
How many borrow times are we...
No. The attack snapped the Ace on hook.
Wow. Okay, so we just have one slug right now on the ground. Everybody else getting out, but, I mean, this is still perilous territory for the survivors. I mean, how far can they really get on this?
Yeah, I mean, all 3 survivors injured.
Frame perfect dead hard. Frame perfect dead hard.
Yeah, that was so clutch. And I'm hoping the survivor in the basement has an Unbreakable, not to pick themselves up, but to speed up the point at which a teammate can pick them up. Okay, the Unbreakable does come out. They pick themselves up. Good, staying self-sufficient. Not exactly what I was expecting, but still very beneficial for the survivors nonetheless.
Really seeing RSK climb back. Obviously a lucky stroke just kind of allowing them to get through here a little bit, but you know, our nurse isn't necessarily out of the woods. We could see one gen gone, another gen at 20. I mean, it's not, it's still neck and neck. We're really only looking at 2 hook states. No deaths, nobody on death hook. It's anybody's game.
And it is also important to keep in mind that all of the survivors do have a purple med kit each. So any survivor who doesn't go down is going to heal themselves in 16 seconds. So at this point, while the survivors aren't quite out of the woods yet, they have the tools to stay self-sufficient and diffuse a lot of that pressure that our killer was able to build in that moment.
And now we are going to see here Ace going on his second hook. He got away. His exhaustion was gone. I thought maybe he'd get picked up and dead hard away at one more time, but it seems like everybody got on gens. They fanned out.
Yeah, and no Unbreakable on the Ace, but he does have the Decisive Strike for that sort of anti-tunneling, defensive, potentially aggressive tool. But frankly, I'd be very cautious about using DS aggressively versus a nurse.
Exactly.
That is a risky decision.
That is a buy your team 10 more seconds kind of decision to make right there. Yeah, that is last-ditch effort.
Yeah, and the Ruin Totem has been broken in the background. I believe that happened while those two hooks in the basement were happening. So they sort of traded pressure for pressure.
Yeah, Ruin has actually gone before Kate got hooked.
They
really were militaristic with how they took that thing out. Absolute precision and knowing to get that out. Because, you know, some of our matches last week, we noticed that Ruin going longer than 3 gens was a headache for survivors.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember there was that one Spirit game on Rancid Abattoir where Ruin was up literally the entire match. And the survivors, I think that game ended at like 2 gens.
Yeah, maybe.
Like 2 or 3, because there was just that amplification of pressure that Ruin gives the killer with that passive regression just at all times is so valuable.
Now, we see something really interesting happening in this match. The Nia was being chased by the Nurse, but Nurse failing a blink, failing a swing, and whiffing on the tree there. Nia, they decided, wait, I haven't hooked Nia. This is not really where I want to put my time right now. I'm a little bit nervous, and they bailed. The Nurse bailed and got nothing for it. Huge waste of time here.
Yeah, because at this point, since the Ace and the Kate have already been hooked, and I believe the Ace is death hook now, Ace is very much the priority target.
Yeah.
That's going to be Tinkerer going off on that gen in the corner that was just visited. I believe that's the Kate who's working on it.
And the whiff, the fancy footwork coming out, the indecision from the Nurse kind of sputtering for a second.
Oh, that's Kate spotted. Okay, they're going to go play this tile again. Let's see if the Kate can make as much value from this tile as she did the first time.
And just that second blink was just, they needed to hold it half a second
just
longer.
Just a little too short. Not even a full meter short. Like, that's you know, a matter of inches.
You know, what's interesting here, seeing the nurse pick, is seeing how practiced people are against the nurse is maybe why it's not the de facto pick that we thought it might be.
Yeah.
Ooh, great patience there from the nurse.
Yeah, that patience in that time between blinks, just
Waiting the panic dead hard.
Yeah, okay. Good. Getting the dead hard out. I would expect her to potentially commit to the Kate here, but I don't know. Maybe she's made too much distance.
Yeah, is she maybe? She's just holding the blink.
Yeah,
and the gen's done. This is an interesting sort of decision to make here, just waiting.
I think maybe a little bit of indecision.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, the lack of a decision there really being the pain point, letting off the injury that, you know, somebody who's been on hook to chase somebody who's not been on hook. I mean, Nia, right, if she burns 30 seconds of time, I think this whole team gets out.
Yeah, and especially considering that right now the Kate is going to be healing herself in the background with that purple med kit having 2 heals worth of charges.
Yeah, this is a really tough spot for the nurse here, having such a strong beginning, and then these survivors using that one mistake to get back. Of course, Nia going down here. First hook.
Yeah, and the thing is, having a first hook can potentially be a kill, but at the same time, having all 3 other survivors healthy, and I believe 2 are currently working on gens. Never mind, just 1.
Just the one, yeah.
The other 2 are kind of hanging out. But see, at this point, the killer kind of has to go back because 4 gens are done. And, I mean, they just got a Pop Goes the Weasel activation. They have to defend these gens, so those 2 survivors hanging out by the main building are pretty safe to do so.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is we're really going to try to see one of the survivors, you know, potentially the Meg right now, who has 0 hook states on them, try to maybe take some aggro, pull the nurse away from one of these gens so everyone else can hop on just one, right? When you have 3 people that can just get on one generator, that thing gets done in 30, 45 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's something like 40. I think it's like about 40 seconds, yeah, because there are those diminishing returns from multiple survivors getting on the generator together. You don't necessarily get a 1-to-1 increase in the amount of progress.
Attempted
caught the dead hard.
Yeah.
That is some really good stuff from the nurse. Recognizing the direction the Meg was facing, expecting the dead hard to come out, and reacting to it, and just blinking right to the spot where the dead hard's going to end.
Yeah, really, really smart there. Being sure that, you know, with dead hard you have the iframes, the invincibility. You want to be sure you don't swing through that. You want to wait till it's done, and really good execution there.
Yeah, and one thing that is really interesting, I think, is if you notice the Ace's location, he's just chilling in that corner because he's Death Hook, and with our point format being based on kills and escapes, it is so crucial to our survivor team that Ace does not get found.
Exactly, yeah. And knowing, you know, just Dead by Daylight as a game, if one person's dead, that's one less person that can unhook, one less person that could take a chase, and that puts pressure on the rest of the team to really be more efficient. Puts everybody in just a more hazardous position, because right now the nurse is having to do the calculations of like, okay, 3 survivors are on 3 gens, et cetera, but when you know someone's dead, it changes that entire dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so much of the sort of higher level game sense of killer in Dead by Daylight is just being aware of like what are the survivors doing, what can they potentially be doing, right? How much pressure am I actually building versus how much pressure do I think I'm building?
Right. Exactly. So here we're seeing Kate go on their second hook. Really good job from the nurse. They're not blinking, just going straight for the hit. They do have a Pop Goes the Weasel up, and they are going to use their Tinkerer to identify the gen it needs to be used on and really just get that usage here, I think. They might. Okay, there we go.
No, they're going to kick. No, they're
I
kicking
was like,
back.
come on now.
No, there's no way you leave a gen with that much progress alone. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, so really good job there. That gen going back to about 49%. If they tap it, it'll stop, but right now it is going to regress back a little bit further. And they are maybe flexing to a different gen. The nurse could claw this back in a way that, honestly, I'm not sure. I'm really proud of these survivors and how they've performed from RSK, but nurse obviously just being such a force to reckon with.
Yeah, and at this point also, the nurse should be aware that the Kate has used both of her heals in her medkit, especially considering that she has put the medkit down, which is actually something that can be very important for this very interesting micro interaction, where the survivor vault animation doesn't include items. And so if the killer sees a survivor running towards a window and they see their item they're holding disappear, they know that survivor has locked themselves into the vault animation, which is such important information to have as nurse.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, the nurse, actually, we saw at the past style, the nurse missing a few blinks, not being able to really clutch up on the Kate, trying to get that kill, and then the survivors, 3 of them hopping on one gen, just knocking that out. Really good stuff. Exit gates are powered. They are going to at least secure the 1 kill here as the nurse, but I think maybe that's about as far as they get.
Yeah, I expect our survivors to just take the 3 out here. That gate is going to get done right around the time the hook comes in. All 3 survivors already at that gate, ready to just walk out that door. Yeah, and that's going to be 3-1 in favor of RSK so far.
You know, you can kind of see that nurse. Maybe it's the adrenaline or something like that. We noticed at the beginning of the match with that nurse, the motion was a little bit fluid, you know, in the camera control, but towards the end there, a little bit shakier, a little bit more maybe jostled, accidentally holding those blinks just a little far. I think they begin to get nervous in, you know, in a tournament of this caliber. Of course you would get nervous, and you know that was a great back and forth match actually. You know, when you see nurses, sometimes you just go, this game's over. But these teams both showed that Nurse is not the de facto win.
Yeah, Nurse in this situation, especially on a map like Blood Lodge that has that like much bigger size, and even with those range add-ons can still be difficult enough to traverse that the survivors are able to split that pressure.
Yeah, and you know, what we saw in the middle of that match was so incredibly valuable. You know, we got down to 1 gen left, and a lot of those survivors, we saw them just hiding in the main building. Like, and many people would go like, what's my team doing? Get on gens, whatever. But the nurse, for a little bit, had no idea where anybody was. And maybe as a killer, you start to spiral out. You know, okay, where'd they go? You know, you start to check irrelevant places. Just allows the team to get back on their feet. And against a nurse, especially when your chases are likely to not be long, you really do have to play that very smart, methodical, sneakier game.
Yeah, and it is really interesting to see how well the survivors were able to diffuse that pressure after having 2 people in the basement. That one unfortunate swing that got caught on the Ace's hitbox on hook rather than hitting the Meg and guaranteeing the trade. Just such an unfortunate event. I mean, it happens to the best of us. Yeah.
The big thing here is, I mean, looking at that, watching that back as we will when we do our recaps, the thing to know there is if you are a survivor being unhooked, you cannot be injured again until you are in control of your character. So your feet have to be firmly planted on the ground, and you have to be able to control your locomotion again. And so as a killer, if you swing at a healthy survivor and the hitbox deems that you maybe were a little too far left, you hit the guy that's being unhooked, that can change everything. That drastically changes that entire game. That's why we saw just 1 person slugged instead of 3.
Yeah, I mean, that basement situation was extremely scary for the survivors.
Yeah.
Like the Ace getting pulled off of the unhook after going for it early, thinking he'd have time while the nurse is away checking a gen, and just getting pulled off, put on that hook, and forcing the whole team to come down to the basement. The injured Meg having to come down and help save.
And honestly, the injured Meg doing so excellently. She was not the one that got hooked coming out of that situation.
Yeah.
She was able to run off and be healed. And so, and then coming out of that, the Ace making his mistake, but he gets unhooked, he comes up, she's right on his tails, and then he dead hards perfectly and just delays a little bit, just enough to get the unbreakable. And it's just such a cascade of events, and 5 seconds one direction would have changed everything.
Yeah, and it really is, in those sorts of situations, like with the format that this tournament is in, with every survivor very consistently having a med kit, either green or purple, you really cannot give an inch in those kinds of situations. You need to get absolutely maximum capitalizing on every little bit of pressure you can, and you really cannot let people get away from you, because if you leave them alone for 16 seconds, they'll be full health again.
Yeah. And that's the big thing that we're seeing in this particular tournament, that, again, being able to ignore the health states as Oni or Billy and just go straight for downs. The big thing in your regular public matches is a teammate might unhook the person on the hook, and then they might set near the hook and heal. But while they're doing that, those 2 people are not on generators. But the ability for someone to get unhooked and then 3 people scatter and get back on gens while the person heals themselves, right? That independence makes it so survivors are just getting so much more done. And you can't, as the killer, right, you're playing mental chess. You're thinking to yourself, okay, there's 1 person on the hook, there's the unhook, they're probably healing near the hook, so there's probably 2 people there, right? You're approximating where they are the entire match. But when there's medkits in play and there's this independence in play, it's kind of anybody's game. You go, 1 person was unhooked. I don't know where they ran to heal. I don't. Everyone else got back on gens. Who knows?
Yeah, and especially from sort of a macro game perspective, too. Having to heal each other forces survivors to group up together, which creates an opportunity for the killer to pressure half of the team at once rather than only one survivor,
Yeah.
which is what these high-level survivor teams want. They want to force the killer to only have pressure on one person at a time.
Yeah.
Because if you can have one person, whether they're in chase or downed or on hook, and 2 to 3 other people on gens throughout the entire match, the killer has time for maybe 3 or 4 chases.
Yeah, maybe. And that's why we see like a lot of complaints about, you know, when you're playing killer, especially in public matches, you're chasing one person. You might see 3 generators pop by the time you're done because those 3 people are spread out. But now, as people start to get funneled a little bit closer to different generators, as they start to have to unhook each other and group up and heal, that's when you start to see the killer's presence having a much wider impact. You know, you're going to lose a lot of gens at the beginning of a DBD match, but what happens around 2 gens changes everything, right?
Yeah, the game drastically slows down, especially once you start to get into that sort of cycle of chasing and downing and hooking, and you're forcing people to get off gens to unhook and, theoretically at least, heal their teammates. You sort of end up with that very much natural slowdown, forcing survivors off gens. And if you can have like one person on hook and one person in chase, that's effectively 3 survivors off gens because someone else needs to come save their teammate.
Exactly. And that's kind of the cadence. That's the cycle you always want to get into, is like, it might take you a second to get that first hook because you have to weaken the map. You have to shoot the pallets.
You have all of the pallets. Nobody's
all the
injured.
Walls. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
like there's, at the beginning of the match, the killer is absolutely at their weakest. The survivors have, like you said, the whole map worth of resources. They'll have whatever items they brought into the trial with them fully charged.
Yeah.
You know, often you'll see a lot of medkits, toolboxes. Sometimes you'll see flashlights or maps, but you know, medkits and toolboxes are sort of the standard.
Yep.
And then as the game goes on, those resources start to dwindle.
Yeah.
And then the killer is able to build that pressure a bit more easily over time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so that's why we're seeing, you know, and especially in this match with like a nurse or something like that, that is a little opposite, right? It's a little bit different, where we're seeing survivors that are not immediately getting on gens because they want the killer to get confused, dither away, panic, go back to other areas, and then they, you know, all encroach on these areas. It is a bit of a different dynamic in a more competitive sort of setting. But at the end of the day, you know, these are kind of the dynamics we're looking for when we're in these matches. You know, where are 3 people versus the 1? That's why in these tournaments you'll never see people spawning in with like 3 people on 1 generator.
Yeah, that sort of thing is a very core inefficiency that you really can't allow from the survivor team until late game, especially against a killer like the Spirit, who we're going to be seeing in this next match.
Yeah, the Spirit has been such a risky pick, I think.
Yeah.
You know, typically in tournament settings, I'm like, oh, that's a Spirit, cool. RSK, though, not really slacking in their capabilities here. Really phenomenal survivor gameplay. To really come out on top for this first sort of set here, they really just need just a few kills.
Yeah, and they've been playing really well. I believe 2 kills will take map 1 for RSK here.
Yeah.
So, admittedly, in the format of this tournament, against players of the caliber we've been seeing, 2 kills may be a bit of an ask. But I think RSK's Spirit, I would love to see them be capable of this.
You know, what we're really seeing here from 4AM is interesting. 2 of them together, right, is already, you know, what we talked about is splitting up and things like that. But now we see just the sprint bursts across the map.
Yeah, and you notice those come right as that first hit comes in on the Nia. There's a comm to the team to say, hey, I'm in chase, the killer hit me.
Ooh.
And at that moment, all bets are off in terms of stealth. The survivors just say, screw it, we gotta go.
Yeah, right. That's the big thing here, is identifying that somebody else is in chase and that they are no longer going to be a priority, so they get right on the generators, get right to work.
Yeah, and also notice where the Nia is taking this chase, which is going to be deep into the corrupted gens where the Spirit does not want to go, forcing them to effectively forcing them to leave chase.
This is a really big thing here that you'll notice you'll be able to take into your regular games, is if a survivor wants you to chase them around corrupt gens, you don't want to do that. You're not pressuring that gen. Great hit from the Spirit there.
Good recognition to just play it a little bit safer, wait at that corner, because the survivor is most likely going to stay in the area of that corner, and if they go further, you'll hear their footsteps running.
So, incredible chase there from the Spirit. 4AM really maybe lacking a little bit of that cohesion there. The Nia threw that shack pallet really early, and that maybe wasn't communicated to the team as Meg ran in there and said, oh no, what do I do here?
Yeah, that can be so difficult. Like, in the heat of the moment, to recognize that what it is you need to be communicating. And also, again, like I had mentioned, hearing the footsteps of the Nia sprinting by, and then recognizing I got to end my phase. I gotta pressure this survivor.
Yeah,
Don't let them get the unhook for free.
This is a really good job. Really, we're seeing RSK being one of, like I said, one of the more commanding Spirit players, listening very well, but understanding the movements of the survivors. And some of that uncoordination that 4AM might have is going to be easily exploitable if they can't get back on their feet.
Yeah, and also, great job from the Spirit predicting where the Nia is going to be healing and immediately taking that health state away.
Yeah. We are seeing a really interesting and confident build from the Spirit, too. We're not seeing like a ton of Hex Ruin or Pop Goes the Weasel. They are primarily going for information.
Oh, the timing, recognizing that she needed to get back to the ace to prevent or punish the Unbreakable. And just a second too late, but immediately able to get back into chase and down him again.
Yeah, and that means that that's like Unbreakable is not going to be able to pick that ace up again, but it will help them get recovered faster if she chooses to slug. But she knows that if he is left alone, he's stuck on the ground, and that's going to be incredible information for later.
Oh my god, wow. The headphones on this Spirit, the audio recognition of the healthy breathing of the Atom, just absolutely phenomenal.
Really, really solid hit here at this pallet. Atom not really playing it too safe, honestly. I think a lot of people would have just pre-thrown that and made a judgment call, but he's trying to pull to this far corner where nobody else is, trying to pull away from the hook. Let's see.
Yeah.
Ooh, interesting.
Okay,
sticking to the pallet.
Yeah, she recognized that the scratch mark stopped, guessed that he doubled back, and was rewarded for it. She did find him, getting that pallet out of the way pretty quick.
And this is the good thing. This is a differentiator for Spirit, right? Spirit's right now in cooldown and decided, you know what, I'm just going to break this pallet. I'm not going to try to play around this and mind game it. It's just not worth it, right?
Yeah, and what if the patience, I think, is the most impressive thing from the Atom, because I've noticed there have been a couple of times going down just to the tip of that sword, but that is going to be two gens done and a third on the way, getting above the 90% mark here.
Yeah, 4AM definitely clawed a little bit at the beginning of this one with the Meg going down so fast. Nia really throwing Shack Pellet very early, but they are definitely doing a great job now at reapplying that pressure. We saw the Ace using his Deliverance to get off the hook.
Yeah, that does explain that risky unhook on the Meg prior. He recognized, I have to get this unhook because I'm injured in chase. I cannot let my first hook happen before activating my Deliverance.
You know, in between Unbreakable and Deliverance, the Spirit went back to him once, downed him again, hooked him, and then he unhooked himself. Nobody was required to intervene there, meaning everybody could just kind of sort of sit on gens and do that sort of independence that we've talked about before.
Yeah, and that is those perks, being able to buy that independence, that sort of ability to play by yourself, is probably the reason we see a third gen completed at this point, which phenomenal use of the tools that the survivors brought into the match to recognize how to maximize their time efficiency.
Now, we do know that the Meg has been hooked a first time, so this is not a total wash of a chase for the Spirit, but I think the Spirit is ready to just switch to a target that is maybe a little bit more... oh, wow, missed the walking here.
Yeah, walking just enough distance to create that sort of insecurity in the information from the Spirit, playing around what I'm assuming is an Iron Will. Considering the audio recognition the Spirit has shown so far, I'm guessing there's an Iron Will on Meg.
Ooh, really good stuff here. Going to hit the gen and give our survivor that's hiding a little bit of time just to further sort of encroach into what I call just rock territory and just be invisible, right? Fully immersed. And let's see if they get called out on that. The Spirit,
she knows someone's here, though. That gen has enough progress that she knows someone has been here recently, because survivors are not going to leave a 5% gen, not with the level of coordination we've been seeing from 4AM.
Now, what we just saw from the Spirit was something really interesting. They knew the Atom previously had double back, right, and had stopped walking, and then and so they stopped short, and it didn't work this time. The Atom varied their strategy, and so the Spirit called it out, but now the Spirit's going to be sort of on their heels a little bit anytime they chase Atom. Are they going to double back or not? They're very aware. 4AM showing that they are not to be really, taken for granted here.
Yeah, and also sort of running back into this corner where the gen has been finished, pulling the Spirit into an area where she really does not want to be. And also recognizing from the Spirit that the Atom has been hooked already and the Nia hasn't, which makes him the priority target for this chase.
Yeah, Adam going down here, really good phase from the Spirit. Obviously, that's a really hard spot to be in as the Adam. You know, you're kind of in between anything optimal or good. Spirit trying to pull a little bit closer to this generator so they can hook and just zoom off, but that may not kind of work out for them.
The gen's only a 40%. They've got time.
It is. It's just the idea of pressuring two people. You know, this is getting down to sort of the wire here as we see someone else pulling aggro, knowing that the blood trails are being left behind. And if Nia could just keep Spirit here, that is going to be 5 gens done. But that is an unfortunate turn right into the gap between the tires there and the tree, turning a little early. The pallet's just on the other side of that. So this is actually a really dire spot to be in. So do they finish this gen before the unhooks? I don't think that's a great idea.
There's only one survivor on the gen. The unhook has come in. The unhook comes in right now.
Yeah, so we see the 90-90 happening. This is really what you want to do. You don't want to let the Spirit know that the game is like this. You don't want to give a reason to camp.
Yeah, but also the communications between Adam and Ace to recognize that, okay, the Spirit is chasing the injured survivor. This is the person who has the least fear of Noed. And so if Noed is going to trigger, let it be on me.
Exactly. And we do see that the Adam has a chance of having decisive strike, so they are being left on the ground there. The Ace, obviously on Deathhook, is not on Deathhook, actually. On second stage, could go down to Noed here, but has a decent enough pallet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm expecting a pre-throw. I see him camping that pallet.
Yeah, you play that safe when you see Noed.
Yeah, I mean, that is not a risk you want to take. Ooh, a missed swing. He's just going to go die corner. Fair enough. Waste some time.
Oh, interesting. We see the
not
Meg.
Quite the spin.
Yeah, we see the Meg actually healing the Adam, which was kind of a choice to make with Noed still in the match, but they decided to kind of walk away from that decision.
Yeah, I would think that they probably have information about where the Noed totem is, but not enough time to go cleanse it.
Yeah, I would imagine that's the case here. With Ace not being on Deathhook, it may not be a bad idea to go ahead and put him on a hook here and try to get something. But the doors are too far away to really be able to bounce back and forth between them effectively, I would say.
Yeah, and it looks like our survivors are going to take the 3 out here. Ace just chilling in the corner. I mean, there's not really a lot he can do at this point. His Unbreakable has been used. His Deliverance has been used. All of his self-defense tools are gone. So, I mean, he's dying unless our survivors make an absolute hero play in, what, probably a minute and a half they have left?
Yeah, right now with the way the endgame bar works is if somebody is slugged, it is a 4-minute bar. You'll see the bar turn gray. It doubles in its time, but if everybody is up and healthy and running around, it is a 2-minute bar. So right now, I mean, they could make something work. Is it worth it? I don't know, right? Because right now they have the chance just to tie this first map entirely.
Yeah, and it seems like they don't know. Yeah, they're going to leave. Not going to risk the Blood Warden. Yeah, no reason to.
Unfortunately, this is his second hook. If this was his first hook, the Deliverance to the hatch would have been really just disgusting to watch.
Yeah, well, I mean, at that point, the Spirit knows the hatch is there. She's just gonna go close it. She's not gonna take that risk.
No. But I can always dream.
Would be fun. would make for a good clip.
Exactly. So interesting. We're actually seeing pretty evenly matched teams right now. The Nurse maybe not being the most safe pick, RSK Spirit being good, but the common thread between them is just that middle of losing everybody. Your pressure sort of just deflating, the air of the tire is gone, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, those med kits and the Unbreakable, the Deliverance, just all of those tools to sort of help diffuse that pressure to make it so that, yeah, you can have, a bit of a rough early game, you can get someone hooked, but as long as the right person gets that unhook, maybe not so big of a deal.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing is, like, you have to kind of watch that dynamic of, like, oh, this Ace is going for this unhook so fast, maybe they have Deliverance, and then kind of trying to deduce from there, and maybe the Spirit knew the whole time, but like, what can you do, right?
Yeah,
try to take a hook and see kind of what comes of it.
Yeah, I mean, if the survivor is in this kind of an environment, if the survivor is running to the unhook injured with the killer right behind them, that's a pretty safe bet they've got Deliverance.
We are looking at our highlights here. We are looking at really great start again, this Nurse, the Kate being just a absolute monster here early, and just double backing on the Nurse, but eventually going down, wasted a good amount of time at the beginning of the match there, and this is
the moment disaster struck.
Wow. And I bet the unhook bar, you guys can see it there, almost complete. He really thought he had that.
And then the dead hard, which if that dead hard hadn't come through, that's probably 2 hooks going back in the basement.
Exactly.
Or maybe eating a decisive strike, and then who knows how things go from there. But that would not have been good if that dead hard had not worked.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're seeing here the Meg kind of last-ditch effort going for the dead hard there, but going just for the dead. And then, we just see the Spirit coming out, commanding start. Really great ears. You know what I mean? I don't really get to compliment ears often. Great ears on the Spirit here, hearing everything. A little miscommunication from 4 a.m. here, on Nia throwing that pallet early.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a miscommunication, or maybe it was a sort of a situation of you need to get away from where we're trying to do these gens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if you do go down at Shack, maybe you use the window, make it to a filler pallet, make some more distance that way. Maybe even you going down is worth it.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell, right, from just sort of sitting objectively of like, okay, the Meg just seemed to kind of be like standing there. Is it misdirection, just buying time for the rest of the team? I still think that hitting the window maybe would have been a better play, but just thinking the pallet's there and then it not being there, and then there's so many things that could make you sort of overload in that situation and just kind of go down. It's happened to me plenty of times.
Yeah, and we also do have to keep in mind that you are seeing a lot of these survivors with Iron Will, just sort of playing around the reality that you are going to see a good bit of Spirit. That Spirit is an option for the killer that is likely enough that it's worth having at least a couple Iron Wills on your team.
Yeah.
Also, that Iron Will is also extremely effective against Nurse as well, because a lot of that information that she can have to sort of blink on your head through a wall, a lot of that is audio.
Yeah. I just kind of thought about it, gave it a little bit more time. Maybe the Meg was trying something, right? The idea of like, oh, Spirit's phasing. Maybe Spirit is going to predict that Meg will hit the window, so she goes around. So Meg slowly is walking. That maybe is probably more likely what it was. To me, I don't feel like there's a good choice there, right? It's full 50-50s all the way home. So now, do keep in mind today, while we are watching this tournament, there are going to be a number of codes that you're going to be able to use that are popping up in the different chats that you guys are going to be able to communicate in. So there are going to be blood point codes. There's going to be all kinds of goodies and codes that you guys can use in your own DVD mobile. So stay tuned, keep engaged, right? And don't close out, don't theater mode that chat, because that's going to be important today.
Yeah, no, they're going to be giving out some goodies all throughout the stream today. So, like you said, keep your eyes on the chat. Maybe you'll get some of those things for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. So be sure that you're paying attention, because those codes should be universal. Shouldn't be too hard to miss them. So just keep your eyes peeled as we move into the sort of next round. We are moving into, like I said, the next set here, and we're looking at a different map, a second set of bans. These bans are going to stack. We know that with Blood Lodge, Hillbilly was the ban coming from both teams to the other team. I don't know what we see here. I would expect either Wreckers or Abattoir. Those just seem to be really the gamut.
I would like to see a Wreckers game, because both of these teams' survivor play has looked very, very clean. So I would love to see how they deal with that smaller map.
Exactly.
Because it's definitely a little bit easier to sort of spread the pressure from the survivor side and mitigate the killer's ability to build pressure on those bigger maps.
Yeah.
And that gets exponentially harder as the map gets smaller. And it turns out I was
clairvoyant.
Right. Just a little bit. Because we are going to be going into Wrecker's Yard for map 2 of this set.
Yeah, this is really interesting, because Wrecker's Yard, while being smaller, is going to put, like I said, a lot of pressure on those survivors, and it's going to make killers like Oni even stronger, and it's going to make Spirit way more lethal. Nurse is a given, right?
Yeah.
But we saw Spirit having to traverse the entire map in their power and then go into cooldown. Now Spirit's going to be able to potentially traverse and get into chase with their power. It's just a different dynamic, right? Where survivors have to not waste their resources quite as fast. They can't spread out quite as far. Things are going to be quite a bit different going into this one.
Yeah, it's also very important to keep in mind that sort of the typical pick for add-ons we've been seeing for Spirit is the purple amulet and the green shoes, which together give you, I believe it's like an extra 2 seconds of phase time, something like that.
Yeah.
And a significant boost to your movement speed as well. So her ability to traverse the map is going to be significantly higher than sort of a Spirit with no or those sort of minimal brown add-ons.
Yeah, and we say that really with regards to Spirit because Nurse has been the odd pick. I think RSK being one of the only teams to really pick the Nurse, or sorry, 4AM really being one of the only teams to pick the Nurse. And
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, they've been 2 of our 4 nurses.
Right, exactly. So, you know, I think we might see more Spirits. You can duplicate play the same killer, but again, it's going to boil down to bans and really who gets banned here. Knowing that it's a smaller map, do they just go ahead and eliminate Oni, who has been a powerhouse on small maps? Or do they risk it and they say, you know, we can take Oni, we can deny him his ability, we could throw every pallet and get 4 gens done and deal with the consequences later.
Yeah, especially because on those smaller maps, that does lead to a higher density of resources. You'll more often have sort of tiles with pallets or jungle gym tiles into tiles with filler pallets adjacent to each other.
Yeah.
And so that definitely does, it has its sort of pros and cons, right? Because on one hand, the killer's going to take a lot less time to get where they need to go, but you're that much less likely to get caught in a dead zone when they get there.
Yeah. Wrecker's Yard is, a phenomenal map when it comes to dead zones because they are forecasted at being sort of opposite angles of one another. But typically there's, you know, if you just don't go and complete that gen, it's a great spot to leave the last gen to force the killer to walk all the way across the map. So it's just kind of this interesting trade with the dead zones. But everything else is shack. You have a beautiful assortment of tiles kind of around it, and then just junk in between each one of those, making this sort of donut of disaster. I'm going to call it the donut of disaster. Where, you can absolutely get into a jungle gym, through the pallet, use the window, and then get to a truck, and then loop that twice, through the pallet, and then get to shack. And really, it's very, very seamless. So excited to see kind of what comes out here. We are hearing that we do have an Oni and a Spirit ban.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if they're trying to sort of push them out of their comfort zone here.
I think that might be a really solid pick. We do know that we haven't seen, like I said, too many nurses. Maybe people have just been holding on to how ruthless their nurses are or something like that. But
yeah, maybe sort of like a don't show your hand kind of situation.
Yeah. So knowing that Oni is not on the table and Spirit is not on the table for the opposing team is going to be interesting to see the picks. As we are loading into the match, I still predict that we will see at least one Oni.
Yeah. I feel like RSK is probably going to pull out the nurse again.
I think they've been consistent enough that I think that's safe. I don't see a reason not to, especially on a smaller map where, look, if you do mess up, if your pressure does deflate, it's just a smaller map. It's easier to accidentally stumble on somebody, you know?
Oh, interesting.
So I am kind of losing my mind a little bit. We are about to load into something. I'm not even going to spoil it. I'll let you guys wait. You guys stay tuned. I'm not telling you. Get out of here. So we are actually about to see a wonderful Huntress. Now, we've not seen a Huntress at all in the 4 days of this tournament.
Yeah, this is the first Huntress we've seen.
And Huntress could be a formidable force. This is a small enough map that I would say it's balanced well enough for a Huntress. It does negate some of... we're seeing an
I
Eerie
see the
Head.
add-on.
Yeah. We are watching an Eerie Head Huntress, which is, if you don't know, Huntress throws hatchets. They are that kind of killer, right? They're throwing projectiles. But the big difference here is that it is insta-down Huntress.
So an important little rule that I don't believe we've mentioned yet is that killers are allowed to bring either one iridescent add-on or 2 add-ons of any other color. And this is the first time we see our killer opting for that one iridescent add-on, and it is for one of the most powerful iridescent add-ons in the game.
Yeah, this is an old version of this, potentially, I think. But, I mean, it doesn't really matter so much at this point because it doesn't stack. But
that was close.
We are seeing a Huntress that is going to be able to pressure the map while they get this basement hook and probably secure it until they die, right? Anyone that approaches is
you cannot save. Imagine a Bubba who can throw his chainsaw at you, and that's what we're working with right here.
I think that's my favorite mental image of the weekend. So right now we're looking at one gen, 74%, the other at 33%. And our survivor that's on hook has already gone through through well over 30, 35 seconds of their first stage. They're going to second stage very quick, and that'll be a secured kill before they can get a lot of damage done.
Yeah, the survivors are only going to be able to get one gen done for this first hook state, but there is another gen about halfway complete, so there should be 2, potentially 3 gens coming through for this hook. However, on a map like Wrecker's Yard that is small with the Killer Shack very central, meaning a basement is central, honestly, when I saw Iron Maiden and Agitation, I kind of knew what we were in for here.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to note here is look at where the Meg decided to pop her gen. It was all the way out in that corner, right? So anything closer, right in that donut of disaster that we talked about, anything that's close to the shack is really treacherous for any of these survivors to go against, and they're going to push themselves there throughout the duration of the match, and I'd be shocked if this Huntress doesn't do it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I am expecting potentially a 3K here, because things are going to get very, very Oh no, Meg, don't do it.
Oh, Meg,
Meg,
you are...
Meg, the risk. Think of the risk. Oh no.
Now, the big thing to note about Iridescent...
Wait, the unhook's coming in while we're working on this. What are they going to do about that? Oh no, Adam goes down.
Adam goes down. This could be another hit on the injured survivor, potentially.
Doesn't seem like it.
No, it doesn't. So
I think our killer's happy to...
What are they doing?
No.
4 a.m.?
No.
Hello. I think it's time to wake up.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be at least 1, maybe 2 unbreakables.
There's a deliverance coming out of whoever
there
just
has to be.
Right.
There has to be a deliverance coming out. But even with the deliverance, it's important to keep in mind that with base kit borrowed time not present and 3 hooks in the basement potentially, our killer can kind of just sit at the bottom of those stairs, and there's really no pressure for her to leave.
The interesting thing here to really pay attention to with Iridescent Head is normally with Huntress, you get 5 hatchets, right? With Iridescent Head, it reduces it to just the 1 hatchet, but it obviously increases the lethality enough to be irritating. And right now, I think the Huntress is playing this smart. They went from 1 to 2 on the old Christmas tree, so...
And a slug under the pallet, too, which is a little bit of a threat, especially now that she's unbreakable, picked herself up and is running away. But the thing is, that's still 2 survivors in the basement with 3 gens remaining.
Right, and almost 0 gen progress happening this entire time, right? So the trade is, they really traded up, right? They got their money's worth out of this.
Though we will probably be seeing a deliverance coming out in the next 10 to 15 seconds.
Right, and it's important to know if they deliverance that the Huntress does not need to throw the hatchet for that, right? That's just a really simple M1 unless there's a threat of a dead hard, in which case maybe use the hatchet as a sort of psychological tool there.
Yeah, I mean, you can... she's expecting it on Adam, but no deliverance coming through.
It is important to know also that they attempted to unhook, which shaves 20 seconds of their second stage off, just making that a lot faster for the killer instead of, delaying the inevitable just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very desperate spot for our survivors. It's looking like they're going to just accept the 2K. I think they recognize that effort to make that hero play, get your teammates out of the basement, backfired. And I think now that the gen is being done, our Huntress may be taking a little bit of an inventory, trying to see where the survivors are at.
And the fact that they are rushing in here is absolutely wild to me. All or nothing, I suppose, might be the mentality here, but
yeah, I think maybe they realize that at this point in the match, it's really, like you said, it's all or nothing. Like either a hero play happens or everyone's down.
From downtown right there, shaving it between the sort of hot water tank and the pallet.
Yeah, and also knowing that the Nia has used her Unbreakable already, she's going to pick up the ace, and that's game.
That's game. Yeah, there's nothing threatening really going on here. Maybe a last-minute deliverance to Dead Hard from the Nia. I don't think she got an unhook, though.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to see No Way Out coming into play, I don't think. I mean, there is the chance of a self-unhook. Never mind.
Yeah, that's right.
She's just going. Yeah, she's the last survivor alive.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah, that was a game.
That was a game of Dead by Daylight Mobile. That was unexpected. I think I put on the blinders for the potential for an Eerie Head Huntress because in my mind, there's
That's
enough.
Not real.
It's not real. Those are fairy tale lollipops. No, I think the risk in some cases is sometimes a little bit rough, right? If the team plays it smart, but being able to agitation to the basement and just call it, I think it mitigated most of the risk.
Yeah, especially on a small map like Wrecker's Yard, agitation is going to get you basically from the edge of the map all the way down to the basement if you take a good path. And like I saw agitation Iron Maiden, and I was just like, we can't see her add-ons, but we know. We know what you got.
Yeah, the minute the ace collapsed into a ball on the floor, that was a dead giveaway. And
yeah. Also, because you would basically never see Iron Maiden in sort of a standard 5-hatchet Huntress environment with survivors of this skill, because those perk slots are too valuable to save a couple of seconds here and there reloading.
For those of you that don't know, Iron Maiden is a perk that comes with the Legion, but it does allow you to reload at lockers or just open lockers or get grabs out of lockers.
Basically any interaction to do with lockers.
Yeah, way faster. Way, way faster. And so the idea with the Iridescent Head is you only have one hatchet, but if you do miss, you can reload just erroneously quickly.
Yeah, and it's also important to keep in mind that while a lot of Huntresses in sort of like the public matches will take those risky shots, they'll, try and hit the cool clips, they'll do things to sort of test and push their limits. In this kind of an environment, when you only have to land one hatchet, you can afford to play it much safer and really only take those high percentage shots.
Exactly. Yeah, so wild performance. Hey, I think at this point we've seen literally every killer I've wanted to see in this tournament.
We got the Plague on, I believe it was Sunday of last week.
It didn't go well.
We got the Huntress. No, the Plague game did not go well. That was a tough one. We got the Huntress today, bringing out the Eerie Head, which, I mean,
that's all. I think that's it. You don't need a follow-up statement. And then we saw Sadako day one, and that really set an interesting tone. So we've seen way more killers than I would normally identify in a tournament roster.
Yeah, especially considering that the only restrictions on which killers you can play are the 1, 2, potentially 3, if this goes to a best of 3, killers the other team can ban. Like, it seems like that does thin out the roster a bit, but considering there are enough killers in the game that are at that sort of high power level, we've seen a surprising amount of variety.
Yeah, we've really seen a good look. All I'm saying is we've seen Iridescent Head Huntress. I think that we can make an argument for a Basement Trapper if it comes to it, right?
You're not seeing that Trapper, Dylan. I'm
no,
sorry.
I'm not. I do want to talk, just going back to the match and sort of what we saw, RSK pulling out, like I said, just an incredible Huntress match here. It really puts a lot of pressure on 4AM. They cannot accept anything less than a 4 out or a 4K, sorry, or else that's it. It doesn't go any further forward for them, and that's a lot of pressure. RSK knew exactly what they needed to make this work, and honestly, I'm sure they were looking for something closer to like a 2K, right, just to be a little bit more commanding, and the risk paid off in spades.
Yeah, and also like what we've been talking about how the Oni and the Billy are such consistent picks because they sort of ignore those second health states. I mean, come on, what does that better than an insta-down projectile?
Exactly, yeah. And the ability to set at the shack and just kind of huck it, see if you get maybe one random hit at a gen.
You can just sit there, body block one door, force the survivors to come into the shack from the entrances that are further away from the basement, make them travel that little bit further.
Yep.
It is interesting because we did see the survivors taking some time to finish a gen while their teammates went struggle. I think maybe a vestige of potentially other tournament formats in the habits of those survivors.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting to think about, people trying to self-unhook last minute. Again, no built-in borrow time to allow them an endurance hit. So the idea of, like, there are some sort of holdovers from different formats where, like, the gens don't matter. It's just the escapes, right? And so
and also just a quick reminder for everybody at home who maybe wasn't here at the beginning of the day when we were discussing the point system. Each side, killer and survivor, gets 1 point per character they basically do their objective on. So for survivors, you get 1 point for each survivor that escapes. For killer, you get 1 point for each survivor you kill. But if you get all 4 of whichever it is you're trying to do, you get 1 extra point on top of that for a total of 5.
Yeah, so 4 survivors escape, that's 5 points. If the killer gets 4 kills, that's 5 points, right? And so that creates, like I said, this kind of dynamic, where you have to get a 4-man escape or a 4-man kill in some of these cases when it's like tied up to really keep pushing for that extra game. And it's really, really interesting going into this, just knowing that, like I said, 4AM cannot drop a single person. Like, they have to absolutely destroy here.
Yeah, they have to get all 4.
And that's a tall order. You know, knowing that in the prior round, RSK and 4AM both just got a 1K. And it was 3 out, right? Making it a 1 and 3 dynamic, flipping it, tying it up, and going into this. And then RSK just not messing around.
Yeah, I mean, the Eerie Head Huntress pick, I'm just still like, that's still just like ruminating in my head. Like, you really did him dirty.
Yeah, and it's so, you know, it's so interesting, and it kind of tells like how we play this game, more public matches, things like that, because like I said, Iridescent was not my first thought. I'm so used to watching my good friends go for great snipes and have fun when I see Huntress.
But they're here to win. They're not here to have fun. I mean, I'm sure they're having fun along the way, but they're here to win.
Money might buy a little fun. You know what I mean?
Tens of thousands of dollars on the line. That's a pretty good incentive to pull out all the stops and, you know, take whatever tools are available to you.
Exactly. So we're going to see another Wrecker's Yard match. Again, smaller map. We are really going to be trying to see what happens in terms of the killer counter picks and what kind of builds are going to guarantee that. It's been interesting. One combination I don't think we have seen at all is no ed, no way out, right?
Yeah, that is true, because those perks, that perk combination is not banned. There are no restrictions on what perks anyone in the match can run. You can bring whatever perks you want.
Yeah, and you know, it's really interesting to run no ed and maybe get one down out of it. But by the time you get that down, the gates are open, right? They're powered.
That's sort of the classic. We saw that in the Blood Lodge match with our nurse.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's one of those situations where, you know, I'm kind of wondering where that synergy is. I'm kind of wondering where more of the guarantees are, right? Seeing Spirit with Lethal Pursuer and Floods of Rage, right? Being like,
I don't know if that Floods of Rage ever actually came into play. I'm sure it did, and we just couldn't see the Scourge hooks.
Right. I think, and that's where we see some of the confidence maybe override what they maybe should have brought or something of that nature, right? So very just fascinating to see the psychologies going into these and kind of wondering what's happening. Why aren't they bringing certain things as well?
Yeah, though we do see the same killer coming back for 4AM as we saw on our last map, Blood Lodge.
Yeah.
So I am expecting the nurse again, because their nurse looks very solid.
Yeah, their nurse was nothing to sort of shake a stick at. I mean, really, we're coming into this. Nurse, I think, for me, always takes like a warm-up match, which I don't doubt they had today, but scrims are always a little bit different than when the nerves kick in and you start actually going against the team you're supposed to play.
Yeah, when you know you're on stream, you have all those people watching, that this is the real deal. This is where, you know, it's the make or break, right?
Yeah.
The nerves are going to set in. Oh, and we're seeing an Oni.
Yeah, this is our first Oni for the day. Very exciting stuff. You know, Wrecker's Yard, again, we've talked about it before, is small enough that Oni might be able to do a lot of damage here, but it's also dense enough that survivors, if they just play safe enough, can deny that power for at least the first 3 gens.
Yeah, and I say this every time we've seen an Oni. I would love to see a game where the survivors actually are able to deny his power for the full duration and like actually force him to run through all of those pallets first, rather than giving him that early hit like we've seen so many times.
Now we do see the Dwight doing a really good job at paying very close attention. Is gonna take the hit there.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah.
I of course you can't say these things as a caster. I really should know better by now.
We really should just mumble to ourselves privately.
Just keep it in my head. Like, come on.
Really good first hit from Oni. That's going to give him about 45% of his power, 40%, something like that. And we're going to see the Dwight really try to take this chase all the way out, away from everybody else, isolate the Oni where he's not going to be able to exert any influence anywhere else.
Yeah, it does seem like we're seeing the strategy of trying to actually just get this first down as quickly as possible rather than farming his power. Dead hard?
Dead hard.
Yeah,
great dead hard from the Dwight. Extra pallet drop there.
Yeah, you saw that forced short swing from the killer as the aim dressing took over.
And the big deal there, we saw it from the Dwight. He ran a little bit wide, so when he got that distance from the dead hard, he was perfectly positioned for the pallet throw.
Yeah, which does make it a little bit obvious, but the thing is, with Dead Hard, with the iframes in the distance, sometimes it doesn't matter if you know what's going to happen. You can't really do much about it.
Exactly. Now here we do see Oni go ahead and go for the slug so they can attempt to get something out of this power instead of immediately dispersing it. And
oh my god, no way.
Wow, the lasers.
The game sense to recognize that he's going to be hiding at the edge of the map instead of near the gen.
Incredible work. That, you know, that is an Oni that has played enough in scrims, in tournaments, to know they're not going to be on the gen. They're not even going to be running from the gen. They heard the power, they got off, and they hit.
Yeah, because the sort of dominant, the ideal scenario for our survivors here was to wait out the entire power, reset the Oni back to square one, but unfortunately, Ace getting found just sitting there on the edge of the map.
Now, we do know the Oni used their Pop Goes the Weasel, their Hex Ruin already out of the game, Corrupt Intervention gone, so they're really just clinging to Pop until the late game that they want to try to avoid here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as we get further into this tournament, we're going to see fewer and fewer teams leaving that Ruin up as people are able to sort of, in that early game, spread out, check wide like swaths of the map for that totem and communicate that effectively to each other.
Yeah, and it's really going to lead me to wonder, is Ruin going to be the pick? I mean, these players that we're seeing here are not going to let that stay up for very long, especially small maps like Wreckers. Is there a better pick? Is Jolt even just a slightly better pick? And obviously that depends on your killer.
Yeah, on the Oni, I feel like he's going to be getting the vast majority of his downs through his power, especially against survivors who are playing safe. Like, this Kate, not shy about dropping those pallets. She is perfectly happy to just try and starve him of his power, burn those resources, don't play it safe, just drop the pallet.
Exactly. The good news, we're seeing this Oni not overcommit to anything. He understands that the map is still quite strong with the
big mind game.
The big standstills, except really breaking off for the Dwight here.
Yeah, and recognizing that the Dwight is actually in a dead zone, whereas that Kate, while she does have only a TL to play in the immediate vicinity, at least I think, that is still a tile for her to play, whereas that Dwight just has nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And then coming back with his ability, knowing that these windows...
Ooh, good read.
Really
just phenomenal.
Good job. Knowing that those windows are treacherously bad against Oni here.
Yeah, like a TL wall can be a bit difficult for the Oni to play, but you see the kind of turning he has available to him, and he could probably just swing his way right around. Yeah, there's the early drop. Oh, and reading the vault.
Listening for it, right? Yeah, great.
Well, you could see he even started like with the way that Oni's momentum works, right? Like he has a very big capability to turn, but that sort of left-right sliding, he was moving before that vault came through. He knew what was going to happen.
Yeah,
there.
Really just trying to bait it out more than anything, and then taking his pop, trying to use it on a gen that has something substantive. This is going to go down to 0 here.
Yeah, and once again, the benefits of a small map for the killer, being able to reasonably travel back and forth across the map to pressure the different gens.
Now, he knows right now that this Kate does not have Unbreakable. She would have got herself up a long time ago if they did, and this is going to put 2 people. This is what we talked about, grouping up so that the killer's like, I know where at least 2 of you are, and being able to get that fresh blood from her.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the Z-Wall Infinite not quite doing its usual work for Fung there.
Yeah, shout out to Cope on that one. We're going to be kind of going over and looking some of these blood orbs dropped by the Dwight who healed earlier. Again, this Oni is really showing some expert handling, knowing, okay, I'm going to hit the survivor who's healthy so I can get my blood as much as possible here. Just really great stuff. Yeah,
and then recognizing, holding his power until he knew there was a healthy survivor there, and he's going to try and play this tile. Ooh, the Dwight tried to crouch in that corner, but the Oni got stuck on him, recognized his positioning, and got that little micro flick to make sure he caught that Dwight.
And we see Oni exercising his knowledge of the map. He understands that right now, okay, Dwight's already used Unbreakable, right? And he's never been hooked. He's not really the person to hook right now and waste the power on. So
interesting. Recognizing that the survivors are going to try and hide, he does check the basement. He's not going to waste time checking the lockers, though, because your power as Oni is your most precious resource.
Now, it does look like he is going to go back, get the sort of guaranteed hook here, maybe use the Pop Goes the Weasel he has built up on this particular gen. Not a bad idea, really. Just, again, Pop Goes the Weasel burns survivor time, and that's never a bad thing implicitly.
Yeah, especially when you have a gen in your immediate vicinity with like what looked to be over 3/4 progress, to be able to just say, you know what, actually, no.
Yeah, right now we're only seeing 2 gens at any, just over a quarter, just under a quarter on one, and then one at 36%. And regressing is really, really fascinating to me. Because these survivors have had a little bit of time to actually make something happen, but maybe they spent some time healing, resetting. The Oni splitting his pressure really intelligently here.
Yeah, especially because something that may be a bit unintuitive to some of our less experienced players, but while Oni is in his power is actually the ideal time for survivors to heal. Because while the Oni is using his power, the survivors do not drop those blood orbs which will fuel him. And so you won't have those sort of big pools of blood orbs that you tend to have when you have multiple people resetting together.
Now, we do know this Oni here has eyes on 3 people. The person who was unhooked the Dwight, he just got the good hit on Nia, and then he gets a fresh hit on Kate.
That'll be power.
That is his power there, but he also knows the Ace is the only guy on a gen right now. He is not threatened at all by what's happening around him. RSK dropping a little bit just in terms of sort of maybe the call-outs, maybe the reads, and grouping, finding themselves in a weird position.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things with Oni. Oni is a killer that, yes, he does have that sort of micro short-term snowball with his power, but more, going to the locker to force the pickup. Very, very smart from the Dwight, recognizing that he goes down no matter what and saying, you know what, I'm going to go down, but I'm going to end your power and hit you with the DS.
Yeah, really smart play, and you saw he dead-hearted for it too, right? He knew exactly what he needed to do. The timing was a little bit rough, so he used every resource to do it, knowing that that was going to waste plenty of the killer's time, and again, just deflate that pressure. We know that Kate right now already healthy again, right?
Yeah, but at this point, there's so much blood out here on the map that I don't know if even these heroic efforts from the survivors will be enough to deny him his next power.
Those mind games were so strong, she did not even see him.
Yeah, I mean, those tiles are very interesting to play because especially the Auto Haven variant is a bit less safe than a lot of the other ones that have that sort of extra wall sticking out from that kind of top section.
Exactly. And the confidence here for him to not even feel the need to break it, knowing that he could probably just play around it if he needs to.
Like, on Auto Haven, those sort of pallet gems might as well be a filler pallet.
This is going to be a really strong Pop Goes the Weasel. 31% dropping down to 6%.
Though another gen is likely going to get done off in the distance. It is 99 right now.
It does look like he's really trying to maintain this sort of 3-gen, just this corner pressure, and it seems to be working for him. You know, it is wide, but the Oni's ability to dash around it is definitely going to allow him some sort of command over it to some degree.
Yeah, and it does seem like the survivors recognize that the Oni is not coming to that 99 gen. They're recognizing the 3 gen he's trying to defend, and they're just saying, you know what, if he's going to stick over here and defend this gen, what's the point of 99ing something across the map?
Exactly. So right now we are seeing that maybe the survivors going to second stage here. And
yeah, he's confirming that for sure.
Yeah, they are.
No one's even close.
Yeah, it definitely looks like, especially with his ability, kind of not having too many more blood orbs around the map, except in deeply disadvantageous areas. This is going to be sort of, I would consider it a reset to some degree. They're able to get just a lot more gen progress, maybe heal each other if they need to, and then, you know, once he gets in chase, then they'll go confirm that unhook potentially.
Yeah, and this tile that Kate is playing, this sort of dump truck tanker thing, is definitely not the safest for survivors. It does allow you to get a little bit of initial distance, just with the general size of the walls of the tile, but once you actually start playing that window, it's not a very strong resource for the survivor to work with.
Now, we do see the Dwight kind of dipping into the tile and just sort of slinking away here as Oni pursues the Nia, who likely has a decisive strike under their belt or in their hand, and really maybe just trying to get the blood off of her before he goes and really tries to hit the team. We see all 3 of them in one position trying to get that gen done, and it might pop before they get there.
Yeah, and I mean, recognizing, like I had said before, that as an Oni, your power is your most precious resource. Having your power available is more important than basically anything else. And so the Dwight recognizing that he is going to chase the Nia and just to make sure he gets his power, even if that drags him a little bit away from the gens.
Really good job there, getting that gen done from Ace, but that is going to be a really solid flick, and that's Death Hook for Ace.
Yeah, yeah, he's going to take it just to sort of dampen the survivors' action economy for the rest of this game.
Yeah, this is at this point, if you overslug too much, you risk losing too much.
But that last gen's at 80% and climbing.
Yeah,
so this is scary for the killer.
Yeah, this is definitely a scenario where if he does not get a grab and a hit, that is brutal. Is that?
Oh, but that's Noed coming into play.
Yeah, and that might be enough actually to get this to work out here. Kate, having used the Unbreakable before, I believe, they might be able to make something happen. This is still really risky. Remember, they have to get all 4 survivors killed for them to have any hope of this working out for them. Yeah,
I mean, we're definitely going to see a bit of snowballing happen here. Interesting. Dwight is starting to make his way over for the pickup, but the scratch marks have been seen. Oh, he spotted him in that corner, and that's a down.
That's an incredible, just last-minute change there. Understanding that, there's nobody here at the doubling back.
This could be it. I think all those Unbreakables might have been used already.
And the interesting thing here is we're going to see the Oni come all the way out, but they have no blood orbs to really follow, and the scratch marks, if they're walking, don't exist. So they're really just going to be... Ooh, do they see the blood?
The injured survivor does have Iron Will, though. Oh, they see the blood. This is going to be... Oh, wait. They didn't see the survivor. They must have heard the footsteps there.
This is a full clinch moment. This is going to be down, and that's going to be... I mean, if there's no deliverances to be worried about, which there could be, you know.
The Kate hasn't been hooked yet, I believe.
I think it might be that they're all dead. Yeah, maybe it is the Kate, actually. I think you're right there.
It's hard to say without the character portraits.
The other thing here is if somebody can crawl to hatch, right? We're still not entirely out of the woods. That is going to be a second confirmed kill, but now the Oni has to play the mystical sort of pickup game. There's no barbecue, there's nothing in play, and these survivors understand that they just need to crawl.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe anybody knows where the hatch is. I think Dwight might, but the thing is that none of the other downed survivor is way too far away to actually reasonably make it to hatch. The Kate is all the way across the map.
This is incredible because the Dwight just managed to evade the Oni. The Oni just kind of walking right by him there. Dwight continuing to crawl, and if he can catch a glimpse of this hatch, because it will spawn.
It's important to keep in mind, too, that the Kate is going to bleed out first. So if Dwight can get on hatch, Kate can prevent the pickup, the hatch will open for Dwight, and that's an escape.
This is really down to the wire here. The Oni has to find the Dwight before Kate bleeds out, and he's probably got sub 15 seconds to do so.
Yeah, this is going to be... oh, he's making his way back. Okay, I think maybe he does know where Dwight is, and he's playing around that bleed-out bar.
Wow, incredible pickup. Good job from the Oni. That is going to make Kate bleed out. And
and you know what? He searched the area. He knows that Kate is not here, so he doesn't have to worry about her getting the hatch because she's going to bleed out while the Dwight's dying on hook.
That came down to the wire. What an incredible way to play that. If Dwight had got out, I would not have been upset because that would have been such a lucky but strategic play.
Yeah, just the timing from our killer to recognize exactly how much time he has to hook Dwight to take advantage of the Kate's bleed out bar running out.
Yeah.
Truly just, like we had mentioned, the survivors starting to run out of resources. You got to keep in mind, your bleed out bar is a resource, just like everything else.
Yeah, that was a wild... Good amount of play from the Oni. We saw them trying to keep that stranglehold on the 3-gen. They played expertly with who they downed, who they slugged. You know, early on in the game, they understood that they needed to get at least a few people dropped before, you know, hitting Dwight, then going off, hitting the ace, just finding him out in the corner.
Yeah, and so that is going to be 9-9 total for our team. So we are going to be going to game 3 here in this best of 3.
Yeah, and that means that there's going to be another ban coming out, which could be Oni.
Yeah, I mean, that late game snowball, like just the recognition that he needs to kill Ace.
Yeah.
So that the other survivors are easier to snowball in the end game was just such phenomenal game sense. And yeah, that hatchet not quite connecting, but I mean, hey, when you got a survivor in the basement at 4 gens, you know, how much risk is there to throwing it?
This was very, very dicey. Knowing the Huntress hatchet hit boxes are as big as a fridge here, still going and getting 2 downs right there from the iridescent head.
Yeah, but also just recognizing something very, very subtle that can help our mobile players here is that you don't necessarily need to aim with your face, right? You can aim by sort of strafing back and forth in those enclosed spaces just to make it a little bit easier, a little bit less mechanical inputs required.
Wow. And then the Oni just absolutely honing in like a missile on the ace, who is as silent as he could be.
Yeah, I mean, I think every power use by our Oni that didn't end in a Dwight jumping in a locker to deny it was 2 downs. I think every single one.
Yeah, and that was really what you need as Oni. You can't really afford to just use your power for 1 down on its own.
Unless you have a bunch of survivors injured, dropping that blood, and you know there's people nearby letting you refuel, then maybe you could get away with it.
Great play from the Dwight here, just to waste a little extra time for the team while they got stuff done. Really, again, the dead hard, and we see...
But also just keep in mind, too, the value of taking the Oni out of his Blood Fury cannot be overstated.
Exactly. You're forcing him to sort of reacquire it again and re-earn it again. And we see the pickup here. Just, no matter who that went to, that was a cool way to end that match, I think. Yeah,
that was definitely one of the closest games we've seen. We've seen a lot of games like get to end game. We've seen, with like 3-4 survivors alive, We've seen a lot of games end with, a 4K at, maybe a time that's maybe a little bit earlier than the survivors would like. But that was just down to the wire.
That really
like
goes
seconds.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of matches we like. It's close the entire way, and then one team clinches it there at the end. Just Noed really doing the work there. That's what we like to see. So
I mean, honestly, Noed really only got him that first down after the gen pop, but it was very funny to see him sort of sitting there staring, like, I know you're going to do it.
Exactly.
You're only going to make me more powerful,
Exactly. So, and that we're going to have to take that same mentality into the next map. We are looking at our next match being at the Father Campbell's Chapel. Again, a reasonably smaller map. It's not small by any stretch of the imagination. It does have the shack. It does have the main building. But it also has kind of some junk in it somewhere. Sometimes really bad places to hide.
Yeah, I mean, and the circus side is basically just filler pallets and then that one window on the carriage.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a map where you can have a 3-gen on the circus side. You can have a 3-gen in the dead zone near the shack.
Yeah, I'm expecting probably a circus side 3-gen. That's definitely a bit easier for the killer to defend, especially if we see Corrupt in the early game. Sort of,
we will.
If we see Corrupt and a shack side spawn for the killer, those 3-gens like over by the circus are going to be blocked, and then I expect that to end up as the 3-gen in the late game.
Yeah, that's really what we're kind of hoping, and it goes back to the RNG of the game of like, where do survivors spawn, where's the killer spawn. You don't get to select those things. You just kind of have to hope it falls in your favor, which
and do what you can to kind of mitigate the effects of that randomness.
Exactly. So really excited to kind of see what the bans are. Kind of excited to see what the killer picks are. Are we going to go back to All Reliable Nurse? Is Nurse going to be banned, or are we just going to see, Yeah,
because this is a third stacking killer ban coming out from both teams here. So there are going to be 3 killers on each side that you're not allowed to play, and I'm curious to see what'll change here.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, we've seen such a wide variety in just these two teams, right? We've seen Spirit, we've seen Nurse, we've seen Oni, sorry, Billy,
my boy.
We've seen Huntress. I mean, nothing seems to be off the table, but we do see one team that is able to sort of take some risks, and one team that's playing it relatively safe. And I think maybe we see just doubling down on that risk taking on this next one.
Yeah, I mean, so what do you think that would look like? You think we'll maybe see that Trapper?
A better Plague? It could be anything. Realistically, if we saw Plague with double apples or something of that nature, we could even just see a Plague that starts off. Hold on, I'm reeling right now. So there are bans that we've been notified of. Off the Wall Hag and Plague have been banned.
Yeah, so the thing is, throughout this whole series, nobody's banned Nurse.
What is wrong with y'all? Y'all okay? You doing okay?
I'm still... We've been doing this. This is the 4th day now, and I'm still mystified by the complete lack of Nurse bans.
I would really be interested to hear from DBD mobile players. Are you guys... is Nurse just really technically complicated to play? Are there some barriers with the mobile platform that make Nurse just less appealing? Or maybe is it what we saw in this very first match where people just practice so much against Nurse that, like, it's just in their DNA at this point on how to play against?
Yeah, and, like, Nurse has been in Dead by Daylight for such a long time that, like, her, like, playing the sort of style and the little micro techniques of playing against her have been so well figured out at this point that, like, it's very well understood both how to play her and her counterplay.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Really, some of the more, I don't want to say dominant, but some of the more, like, shocking matches have been the odd picks. Our second Hag was incredible.
That was such a good game. The Disturbed Ward Hag game, that was... Oh my god, the sheer value from those double hits at the main building was just wild.
Yeah, I mean, even the Wraith, right? We've seen, like, just strange... The only one that didn't seem to work out was the Plague, and that was primarily, in my opinion, because they just did not seem to have that experience.
Yeah, there was a lot of, like, mechanical slip-ups in terms of just not landing your shots. Just, it seemed like maybe a bit of discomfort with the strategy of Plague. Like, they really didn't make an effort to sort of spread the infection at the beginning of the game, because if you get hit with even just the tiniest fleck from the Plague, that's a health state eventually.
Yeah.
Like, if you're walking around, if you're doing gens, if you're cleansing totems, or I don't know, whatever other action survivors are doing, you're going to end up injured. You're going to end up broken. You're going to end up puking.
Yeah, the Plague match we saw, they very much focused on just one person, getting them fully infected, and that's just not indicative of somebody who plays Plague at a really, really high level. And so maybe it's somebody who just, oh, they banned our killer. Who can we play all right? And somebody was like, oh, I can play Plague a little bit.
Yeah, and they even seemed a little bit like there seemed to be a little bit of discomfort with just the mechanics as well. Like the aim was just not quite there. They seemed a little shaky.
Yeah, so I think it's not ruled out. I mean, to some degree, it's a little ruled out because of the bans that just came out, but it's not completely ruled out that Plague could be a pick at some point. And honestly, again, with the medkits that we see, Plague would be a phenomenally strong killer if picked up by the right person. They just have to be willing to kind of go in there and try it.
Yeah. Do I miss the days of seeing 4 medkits and just switching to Plague and just
yeah, exactly.
You thought you knew what you were in for.
Yeah, that's the big thing is knowing that independence, I mean, it comes in a different format of like, okay, you can heal yourself now, 8 seconds, drink out of a fountain, but now you're empowering that Plague to get just ridiculous hits with projectile.
Yeah, and especially in a competitive setting as well, there's sort of the sort of classical old school meta against Plague before she had 1 red fountain by default, and if she didn't bring apples to sort of benefit her there. The meta, the primary strategy was just never cleanse, rely on your basic looping. She's just a 4.6 killer.
It was like Oni, but inversed, right?
Yeah, where it was like you stay injured the entire game to deny her power. Yeah, really, very much just the inverse of Oni.
Yeah.
But in a competitive setting, if someone gets hooked, you cannot rely on the killer to let you get that save uncontested.
Yeah, especially, if you're infected, and so that then the strategy becomes, okay, but cleanse where gens are already completed, cleanse where she's not really going to take. So there are ways to play against Plague, but Plague is really, really strong. And again, a pick like that against somebody who understands the Plague could throw people off really, really hard.
Yeah, I mean, playing as and against Plague is very much a test of your macro game understanding, of recognizing where and when you need to be, when you have that extra couple seconds as the Plague to go say, hey, I'm going to take a little detour, I'm going to pick up a fountain and power up, I'll be with you in a sec.
Exactly. So I don't know what we're going to see coming into these. We do know that right now Billy is banned on both sides. We have a Spirit ban, a Nurse ban, I believe, or a Spirit ban, an Oni ban.
Yeah.
And then we're seeing Hag and Wraith, right?
Plague.
So,
Hag and Plague.
Or Plague. I guess I'm hoping for a Wraith subconsciously.
A Wraith would be interesting. I would love to see another Wraith coming out, but I don't think we'll see it.
After we saw
not at this stage
our dominant Wraith match, there was a Wraith ban immediately afterwards.
Yeah,
there was a fear put in the hearts of people everywhere.
I know. I think that definitely felt very reactionary. That was like an, oh my god, we just got rolled by a Wraith.
Yeah.
Like in a tournament on Blood Lodge.
Yeah, so I don't know. Anything could happen. Again, with the Huntress coming up, this could be anything. There is a clear team here who understands a myriad of killers, and then there is a team that I think is going to stretch themselves here.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, so much of that, we've been seeing the same killer coming out for 4 AM for this entire series.
Yeah.
And so I feel like they, of course, to truly understand Survivor at this level, you have to also play killer. You can't... There are so many little nuances and just the thought process inside the head of your opponent that you're going to miss if you only play Survivor. And same goes for Killer.
Yeah.
Like, you have to play Survivor to understand Killer at that really, really deep level.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think it's interesting sort of seeing that they have a dedicated Killer player.
Yeah. Yeah,
who I don't believe has played Survivor for them either. I believe this is just sort of their dedicated killer player.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're steeped in that, if you got a couple thousand hours of just playing like 4 different killers, that's not always bad either.
Yeah, especially when you get used to this competitive environment. Like, I find personally, I've played like in scrims a few times just for fun, and I find that I have some really bad habits that are built that really do not work in an environment where the survivors are actually very skilled and playing to win, because I'm so used to people who are kind of just running around pressing buttons.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like kind of anything can happen. We're going into this right now. Again, Father Campbell's Chapel, 4 a.m. killing first, right? And RSK, I think, is to me the wild card, right? We saw them come out with the Huntress, and
which that I didn't expect.
The gauntlet, they threw it down. Is 4 a.m. going to answer that same sort of energy and come out here with something wild? Their Oni was not anything to sort of
very
scoff
solid
at,
play.
right? Yeah, so they kept up. They made incredible decisions the entire match. The consistency was actually just top-notch. So, which is kind of a testament to RSK Survivors, too, because they didn't drop until the very end, right? So it was just a neck and neck. And this is the third match, right? Like, both of these teams, no matter who moves on, has certainly earned it. And let's take a look. We are seeing a Wraith from 4 a.m. RSK, I mean, they're great. Wraith might not be enough, but it depends on the build, I think.
I am very, very curious to see what comes out for the Wraith in the competitive setting here. Because the last time we saw a Wraith, it was that very gambling kind of build where, don't get me wrong, each of those perks is strong in its own right, but to get the kind of value you need to beat a team of this caliber on Wraith, you got to be coming in prepared with something extraordinary.
The stars align, and you can nudge them a bit, but they have to align, right? If you're going for Haunted Grounds, if you're going for Make Your Choice, right? And really, against a Wraith, they can afford to play incredibly safe, too, because he really has no chase pressure.
Yeah, this is an interesting build I'm seeing, because this is... So, for those of you who maybe couldn't see... we are seeing Call of Brine, Eruption, and Pop Goes the Weasel. It looks like maybe double Windstorm, potentially. That's a lot of speed. That's a fast fill-up.
Yeah, that is...
yeah, no yellow bar. That's double Windstorm for sure.
Yeah, this is going to be... Ooh, good whiff there. That is going to be a good pallet out of the way.
Unless...
He's going to come back, okay. Ooh.
No, is that... Wait, actually, is that Windstorm Shadow Dance I'm seeing?
Yeah, he's got Chainsaw Feet. So let's take a look and see, does he block the window up here?
Yeah, force the pallet drop. Not the drop. Oh, taking the risk there. Ooh, but a whiffed swing.
Fancy footwork from Nia here. This Wraith not really doing poorly. You know, I would expect that he's... Ooh, good hit there. I would have almost expected that they held that first hit a little bit longer than they did.
Yeah, though I definitely... We're seeing a little bit of hit-and-run gaming here with Call of Brine and Eruption coming into play. But I don't know how I feel about that. Considering the... I don't know how I feel about the hit and run, considering the med kits on these survivors, that everybody coming in with a purple.
I do wonder if he's really trying to get that Eruption procced in multiple places and trying to weaken the map before he really commits to somebody, waiting a good minute and a half before he really starts putting the pain on him.
Yeah, there is a 3-gen here that it seems like he's trying to defend, and the survivors haven't been able to get a ton of progress on it. And look at that. That Shadow Dance just chewing through pallets.
Yeah, we see the yellow bar when he kicks gens. The yellow bar means that he is moving faster than he ordinarily would for that particular action. But we do see this ace just ready to top this gen off and get that done real fast here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a pretty immediate Eruption call out once someone does eventually go down, but the thing about a Wraith is that you can't really guarantee that someone's going to go down.
Yeah, the big thing here is, are they going to be able to prevent him from even getting that far? We see them absolute monsters on generators. They feel very safe.
Yeah, but the thing is, he does have a bit of a 4-gen here, actually. Ooh, a hit through the pallet on the Kate. That's going to be...
He does need to commit to that.
I don't know. See, I'm assuming he's going to leave her, keep defending these gens, because he has 4 gens all within like a few seconds of each other. This is going to be very difficult for the survivors to break if they're not careful.
Here's the big thing. I think Wraith could easily fall into a position of absolutely just playing Gen Defender where he can't commit because people run to the side opposite where these gens are, right? And so we see kind of a rematch from that Sadako on day 1.
Yeah, and the survivors are just doing such a phenomenal job of just staying disciplined and running away from the gens that they know the killer is defending.
Yeah, let's see if he can kind of contest this. He does need to push this gen. We do see people healing. Maybe the strategy is to try to get them to chew through those medkits as soon as possible. This pallet is...
gone.
Yeah,
that was the first pallet down, I believe, at the start of the match.
It was, yeah. Let's see, he's going to go back and check this gen. This is going
to get that regression going. It's just, the thing is, it's so important in this scenario to keep that regression going, to defend these gens for as long as possible. But the thing is, you need a down to get your Eruption rolling.
Yeah, I mean, we see right now the Kate already just having left her medkit somewhere, assuming it's out of charges.
Ooh, good movement. Really? That double back on the Kate, baiting out the swing in the wrong direction from our killer.
Now, do we see a pallet throw here on Shaq?
We
do. Finally. Yeah. Shaq pallets out. He might... There we go. He's going to break. and then he's gonna leave. Yeah, this is interesting. There's nothing in this area, but the problem is if he hits somebody, they're gonna take their speed boost. They're gonna go right to main building.
Yeah, and the thing is, he can see that the Kate is done with her med kit. I believe that the Nia is as well now. But the thing is that the survivors have 2 gens that are like 80% progress. And the thing is, I don't know if this sort of slow game is going to work out in the end.
Yeah, I don't think that in a comp setting you can really, really whittle them down the same way you would be able to in a more public sort of match. We're going to see that far corner gen right there. That is going to be one of the 3 that he's really trying to hold.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he does still have a 3 gen in this corner, but the thing is, it's being worked on. It's at 70% right now.
Ooh, good hit there on the Nia. Yeah, I mean, this is going to come down to maybe Noed, maybe endgame, which means all these perks he brought to front load the match are really not getting very far.
Yeah, because the thing is, he has not yet gotten a hook. He's gotten a lot of pallets, a lot of tags, a lot of gen kicks, but no hooks.
This is kind of the fear you have to have when it comes to hit and run. You do eventually, and it's better that you do so early, commit to a chase, get a hook, force people to start coming for unhooks, get them off generators. And that hesitancy to do so early means that you certainly can't do so now.
Yeah, but the thing is, at this point, all of the pallets in this area are gone. The survivors' medkits have either run out or almost have run out. And the thing is, the drop in efficiency is so severe between having and not having medkits that I think just the time that the survivors are going to have to spend resetting, because in this giant dead zone, you cannot stay injured. You can't work on gens injured when you have 0 resources to work with.
Yeah, it's just going to take one overchase, one moment of being too preoccupied, and then, somebody breaking that. We see that nobody's really gone back to Shaq right now to even tap that gen, so he might be getting what he wants out of this, which would be...
the timing to catch that Kate coming back to the gen is so perfect.
She's going to be injured. That's going to take somebody else healing her to get her sort of readied back up.
Yeah, exactly. But we do see the survivors sort of making their way into that corner to start working on that gen again. Oh, no.
She didn't see the pallet break, I guess.
Yeah. Oh.
Faking the window, though. Incredible. There goes all the potential out of that sort of interaction. Wow.
Yeah, if that had been a down, that's starting regression on all of the gens. That's, I believe, 10% regression. Or 15%? I'm not sure which version of Eruption this is.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because if this is the version of Eruption with the 25 seconds of incapacitated,
yeah,
getting hit with that would be a disaster.
Yeah, especially in a competitive setting, it just kind of lends you to doing nothing but hiding. Yeah, man, we do see 3 people about to be injured.
Yeah, but you see, it's interesting. He chooses to commit to the Fung that's a Nia, rather than the Kate. Just because he knows that the Kate is going to be able to get herself to a resource and make catching her just a little bit too difficult.
He's going to kick this gen. He is going to need to go back to Shaq or lose that, knowing that there are 2 people over there. But none of these gens have a particularly high amount of progress. One of these survivors injured, we are going to see the window block come from him.
Yeah, and breaking this 3-gen now that those medkits have been chewed through is going to be so difficult. So the thing is, I think we had our doubts about it, but this strategy might end up working in the end, just relying on that sort of built-in inefficiency that comes from survivors needing to heal each other.
We see our first commitment coming out. Is this going to be a big eruption sort of proc here? Dead Hard,
just
maybe.
Bait the Dead Hard. Okay, there it is.
An incredible work. We see 3 eruptions, those gens all exploding. Nobody really allowed to work on them right now while this hook comes out. That is going to really hinder the team. And now here's the counterplay. The Wraith does have to go back and kick those to re-proc eruption on them. So how do they sort of deal with this?
Yeah, but the thing is that cooldown is short enough that the thing is I think these survivors are actively going to be preventing those gens. Like, I think if you miss the eruption proc on one of those gens, it's really not that big of a deal because you're going to have enough time between this eruption proc and your next to get those gens regressing. You're probably going to kick each gen a couple of times between now and the next time the Wraith downs somebody. Because really, these downs are relying on the slight overextension from these survivors, right?
Yeah. The interesting thing we've kind of noticed as well is that these survivors were able to continue working on the gens, which means they are aware of eruption before it even went off. That means everybody got off the gen the minute that Dead Hard did not go off.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think if you see a killer kicking gens this aggressively, you kind of have to assume they have eruption. Because at worst, you lose a second or 2 of gen progress by playing around it, right?
Exactly.
So not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. It is a much bigger deal to get hit with Eruption.
Now we do see they are everybody playing it safe. Only one hook right now. A failed skill check just naturally coming off of this gen here. We do see the pre-run coming out of that one. But
yeah, I think the survivors have kind of given up on preemptively breaking this 3-gen and recognize, okay, you know, these gens are going to have to go eventually. We're going to have a really hard time breaking this 3-gen. So let's just get all the other gens done because clearly our killer has no intention of going anywhere else.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is if you have a 3-gen with 4 survivors that are healthy, that 3-gen is not safe for the killer. That is absolutely still a liability.
Yeah, especially considering that the primary perk that's defending these gens is going to be Call of Brine effectively by itself for the majority of the time. And the Dead Hard coming out.
Good down there.
Well, there goes the Eruption again. Hopefully nobody got hit by it. Though, because the thing is, even a slight lapse in communication at the wrong time can result in a survivor getting hit with Eruption, which is just disastrous.
We do see 2 gens that are close to proccing. One's going to be done. One is at 97, so that is main building done. Let's see the kick here come out on this gen.
Yeah, this is shaping up to be a long game, folks. So, you know, get comfy, get a snack, get a drink, maybe stretch your legs a little bit. I think we have time.
Yeah, we are definitely going to be in a compromising position here. The Wraith, if he slips up just a little bit, chases too long, one time too long, it's going to be a tough time for him.
Yeah, he keeps falling for those window fakes too.
Yeah, you really should start calling those or you know, baiting survivors into it.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a double back. This is going to be Nia. Nia's been, I think, categorically the easiest one to hit, but definitely has played this tile very intelligently most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, just recognizing that either way, if you get hit there, you're going to make a bunch of different distance. You're going to run out of the 3-gen. He's probably not going to chase you, but you have to just take the window because the pallet's gone. What other resource do you have?
Yeah, really good job here.
Ooh,
they're
fake.
learning from his fakes that he's kind of fallen for in the past here. The problem is he can't really commit to that. He knows that this other gen has been gone too long, and there's a failed skill check.
I'm a little surprised he isn't going to catch that Nia now that she's injured in that corner by the hill. That's personally what I would have done because I think sorry, I don't think that hill is there. I think I'm thinking of the hag matches from last weekend.
I mean, there is a hill there in that corner, yeah. So let's take a look here. We do see, just again, somebody always harassing this generator here. Shack gen likely not being worked on.
Yeah, I mean, if any of the gens are going to go, it's going to be that one.
Yeah, so really knowing that there's no other progress anywhere else, he has very little incentive to leave, just sort of hover-handing this one. And he might get this hit on the ace.
Yeah, this should be a hit.
Yeah, good job there.
Yeah.
So that's 3 people injured. He really, at this point, should commit to somebody. He's going to cloak, probably kick, and then probably just try to find someone ASAP.
Yeah, I think he can afford to go hunting a little bit here. Like, none of the other gens have been touched. He has 3 survivors injured. This is a moment where he really has to find where they're resetting. And, he sees the scratch marks. He finds the reset. Okay, and this should be our Nia going down here, but potentially a good body block from Meg coming out.
Really good fast vault. They're going wide for that.
Yeah, and see the body blocks coming in. He's just going to take the hit. And at this point, I think he knows that the other survivors are probably still resetting, but we may see him run back to the gens just a little bit paranoid, just trying to make sure that nothing happens under his supervision.
Yeah, and this is kind of the interesting thing we've kind of talked about before. With medkits out of the game, we do see survivors grouping up 2 and 2 a lot more often. They have to heal each other, which slows down progress for everything. Now, this also buys them enough time to do what Ace is doing and prep for the potential for a no-ed once they get this last gen done.
Yeah, and no-ed is a very real risk when you're going up against a more basic sort of M1 killer, because those killers are much more likely to end up in endgame versus someone like an Oni or a Spirit who has that very real possibility of 4King with gens still on the board.
Yeah, we do see this Ace here playing really, really well. We do see the rest of the team here as well. Again, like what we've talked about, just kind of the grouping. And Wraith kind of not reading the room, really being scared to leave for any long period of time to chase anybody. But he might get this Kate actually push her to the shack corner, and this could be a really hard down for the team.
Yeah, I mean, I expect her to just eat this hit and run away. Yep. I mean, that's what I would do in that situation. Just apply that, just sort of splitting your presence across the map as Survivor is just such a big deal, because it forces, like, the killer can only be in one place at any given time, right? So if you make the killer decide, am I going to chase or am I going to defend the gens, eventually they're going to make the wrong choice. You can only flip that coin so many times.
Let's see here. We do have the Meg that actually still has their med kit. They're going to turn back in. They got that gen from 0 to 28 pretty quick, not bad. But Wraith still really waiting for a mistake. He's going to hold this game as long as he can until there is a mistake for him to capitalize on.
Yeah, and really intelligent pathing from the Meg to recognize that you're in a dead zone, you're getting hit no matter what. Just delay that first hit, make distance from the gens, and just don't let him catch you too far out of position. Draw him out of position instead.
We do see in the distance a failed healing skill check potentially going out there. He's going to get the hit on the Ace and probably try to commit to this, but he recognizes the fake, and this is going to put Ace in an interesting position here at this LT wall.
He gets the body block. I think that may have even been a dead hard to make sure he gets that window first. Never mind, there's the dead hard.
There's the dead hard, and the filler pallet, and that is a down. Eruption proccing. There's no gen right now above 17%. He does have to be careful to see if there's a stun, which is very unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, the odds of a survivor just casually being all the way across the map from the gens is pretty low. I mean, generally speaking, the survivors are going to want to space themselves a little bit away from where the killer is going to be, especially if you're trying to have like a mass reset, taking like 2-3 people from injured to healthy. But being all the way in the opposite corner at this level of play, no, they recognize where the killer is actually a threat.
And this is really interesting. We do see the Ace already unhooked in a chase. He knows the gen percentages generally at this point. He's gone past 2 of them, and you can eyeball the gens to kind of get a good idea for what that sort of looks like. But he does really need to get those eruptions back out, get that brine back out. You can't let him go too far.
Yeah, and that's eruption and pop, by the way. Interesting that he chose to not use that on the generator that he and the survivors have been fighting over so much, to put the pop goes the weasel instead on a gen that only has a couple % progress.
Yeah, that is an interesting pick. Maybe
I think it doesn't matter.
I don't think it matters too much. I think at the end of the day, maybe it's just I didn't even think about it, because realistically, he's only had like 3 hooks at this point. Pop has probably not been on the very top of mind. And we're going to see a good hit on this Nia potentially. Nia has had fancy footwork.
Yeah, her pathing has really been good, especially kind of recognizing the sort of more difficult control scheme that something like mobile leads to, where you have to be like swinging and controlling your character and like the movement and also controlling the camera all simultaneously on like a relatively limited input device.
Yeah, exactly.
It definitely does lend yourself to maybe being a little bit more spinnable than the people we're used to.
100%, yeah. And I think that Nia knows it, right? Maybe has some experience being spun themselves. Meg getting caught just pants down out here in the corner.
But again, just take a hit and run.
Yeah.
You got time. I mean, and the thing is, a third progress and climbing.
Yeah, exactly. This is a war of attrition. Somebody has to make a mistake, or there has to be enough of a gap for the Wraith to feel comfortable to chase for the additional 15-20 seconds.
I think getting like those 2-3 survivors injured has seemed to sort of be the trigger for our Wraith to say, oh, it's cool. But hearing the Ace working the chest in the basement, not going for it though. Oh, there he goes. He finds him. I was going to say, you definitely heard that basement chest. You can hear those from pretty far away.
Yeah, they are disgustingly loud. That is a good hit. The Ace is going to find a toolbox, though, so they are maybe going to try to accelerate their way through this match if they can save it for the last 25%.
Yeah, and the call of Brian Ping being like, hey, there's people on the gen. Come back. I'm being worked on. They're touching me. Yeah,
there are really 3 survivors back here. This is really a tough spot to be in. And I don't know. I mean, this at this point will drag on longer than the Hag match.
Yeah, I mean, these games, I wonder if, hey, do you know if there's a server timeout on mobile? Do you know?
I'm going to bet that there's not. So let's go ahead and see. If I were running this Wraith, honestly, I think I would have got rid of Pop and gone for Bamboozle. I think that would have made this match so different in how it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, Bamboozle on M1 killers is usually a bit of a staple in these sort of environments. But I don't know, maybe the thought process is that as Wraith, you do have a bit more ability to body block those windows yourself. There's a little bit less necessity for the perk. Maybe a little bit more ability to use that sort of uncloaked speed boost and your speed while cloaked and maybe play those tiles rather than just shutting them down.
We do see the highest progress percentage at about 8%, 7%. That should get halted here in just a second as they enter Shack, but 3 survivors, soon to be 3 survivors injured. Hopefully a body block at the window here.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so...
Now this, I'm expecting maybe a commitment here now that we have...
Did she turn back in? No, okay.
No, yeah. Oh, no, the Meg just got healed, I believe.
Okay, so this is going to be, I think this pallet's chewed through. Yeah, I think this is going to be a potential dead hard, so they are going to have to wait this out, be very patient here. Could be a dead hard for the window. Do they get the hit, though? That's a hit. Good job.
Yep, and
if
there's
they can
eruption
hook
on the 0% gens.
Right. If they can hook in that 3-gen, this match will basically be a... I mean,
yeah,
it would be tough.
Yeah, very. I at this point, our Wraith has been playing this really, really well, and this just continuous regression from the Call of Brine Eruption, showing why those perks are
very different.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah.
And also recognizing there is actually still a pallet at that 4 lane. This area is not quite as out. It's not quite entirely out of resources. It's very close. There's probably 1 pallet left on this entire half of the map, but there is one.
Ooh, good job baiting out the unhook there, getting the hit, making a trade hopefully. Ooh, the dead hard.
Oh, the dead. But the Kate going, I'm sure she has DS Unbreakable. She's fine.
Yeah, the Kate's face being mangled so Meg can get away. And we're going to see, hopefully, a 2... Ooh, good job. I think
just
recognizing...
a little too far.
Yeah, Meg was going to dead hard hit that window, be able to make some distance here.
Yeah, it may have been worth it to force that dead hard, though, just to burn that resource for the next 40 seconds to a minute or however long it takes her to get the exhaustion back. Because, I mean, you know, the exhaustion not recovering while sprinting, if you do want to, like, cover the map and actually get to where you need to go, you do kind of have to sacrifice a little bit of efficiency in getting your exhaustion back.
And we do see here, good job regressing that gen while just chasing that Nia around enough for that gen. That is going to be the Unbreakable popping right there.
Yeah, recognizing that he extended just maybe a little bit too far on the ace chase. Though I do find it a little interesting that he's not going for that injured Kate who just burned her Unbreakable, but is instead going for the Nia.
I think really this boils back down to I just need to stranglehold these gens.
God, that body block's so clean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just understanding that the gens are the priority and that, you know, if a chase goes on too long in these areas that are not weakened, ooh, the spins. We saw the
look
good.
At that.
That's the, you know, it didn't work this time, but that's the movement we've seen from this Nia the whole match that has caused a whiff twice.
Yeah, no, I mean, those spins are definitely really interesting because keeping in mind how far forward the Survivor player model leans while injured, it definitely gives you sort of the appearance of a ton of momentum, maybe even a little more than you actually have.
Really good job here. I think the Survivors...
12% gen progress, though.
Yeah, I mean, the Survivors, I think, are going to need to really...
I mean, honestly, I don't see a way out of it, even with 4 Survivors. Like, that gen spread is just so tight. 2 of them are so inaccessible. I really just don't... I don't see a world in which the Survivors are able to get these gens done at this point. Like, trust me, I would love to be wrong. I would love to see a way that, you know, to defeat this strategy, but frankly, I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big reason why on other platforms we saw this particular brand of gameplay heavily hit, Call of Brine being nerfed really, really largely.
I mean, thank God.
And Eruption being really kind of gutted at its core. I think this is a big reason why, because at the end of the day, I mean, this Wraith not playing poorly, but bringing in a weaker tier killer to really chokehold a win that ordinarily probably would not have been awarded to them.
Yeah, I mean, in a world where Call of Brine and Eruption were never introduced to Dead by Daylight, this game would have been over like 10 minutes ago.
This would have been wraps, yeah, a long time. And, you know, the idea of spawning into a match and saying, I'm just going to stay near these gens all day, I think that has its own sort of problems to it that were addressed in other sort of facets. So we're seeing that exact type of gameplay come out here and how effective it is, even against really tried and true teams like RSK. I mean, what are you supposed to do here?
Yeah, I mean, the Survivors have been playing so well coordinated, right? They've been playing, you know, they've been keeping themselves away from the 3-gen. They've been denying the downs. I mean, we spent, what, probably 10 minutes before the killer got a down? Maybe not 10. Maybe it was like 5 or 6, but still.
It feels like 10 minutes sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in this world where a team of Survivors that is playing at this level of coordination, I mean, you know what counters this level of gen regression? you know, maybe a certain area, maybe a little circular area on the map where the survivors can go to heal themselves. That would, you know.
Yeah, that or, you know, a myriad of perks, fast track, things of that nature, just as this builds up, kind of hopefully backload some of that. We do see a gen, though, accelerating right now, 37, 39, 43. We see that toolbox in the basement.
Toolbox coming into play.
Ooh, the Wraith being just distractable enough, and the Neo wearing that like a crown. And we guarantee he's going to go back.
Leaving, yeah, he's... Oh, wait.
He is sticking.
Oh, he didn't get the bot. No, he's got to go back to that gen, right? Maybe, honestly, maybe our killer's getting bored of this, and he's saying, you know what, screw this. I'm committing to a chase.
Yeah, I mean, this is at the end of the day, I don't know, maybe someone's got to take their dog out, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just a failure of patience from the killer, recognizing that, like, if I play, like, this game plan is working, right? I'm keeping those gens at 0, playing this hit and run, but the thing is I'm not getting anywhere. Like, right? He's not really getting, like, every once in a while, like, maybe every couple of minutes, the survivors will mess up and give him a hook.
Yeah, I was going to say, this was a war of attrition that, I mean, if the survivors messed up, but
they
relying
have to be aware
on
of
that.
Though, right?
You would think.
Oh, no, wait. I bet you they cleansed all the totems.
It looks
they
like
had plenty of time. They cleansed all the totems. Noed never even got to activate.
Exactly. Yeah, this is going to be a 4 out. I mean, if nothing else, I think blood point values are going to be incredible here. We do see the bags coming from the Meg there.
Yeah.
You know, understandably, I think I've bagged a killer or two for that particular perk loadout.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I got to say, I'm personally, you know, just seeing a killer load into a match with Pop Goes the Weasel, Call of Brian, and Eruption just kind of sends me back to an era that I do not miss.
Yeah, it's like a cold plunge that I didn't ask for, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is going to be a 4-man out for RSK, 4 a.m., coming with an odd pick and a strategy that seems tried and true if you play it in pubs, of course, but in a spot like this, I think, yeah, 4 a.m., it seems like they threw a little bit just to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I know I personally would not have the patience to play that kind of a match all the way through. I would just, you know, maybe our killer needed to go to the bathroom. Who knows? Maybe they said, you know what? I just got to make a play. I'm not really getting anywhere, right? Like, there's that sort of eternal neutral trade, right? Like, you get a hit, you force the survivors to reset, you force them to take that 16 seconds and heal, and, you know, go across the map and cross back. But the thing is, you're not really accomplishing anything, right? The gens can only regress so far.
You know, the big thing I was seeing is I think he had more opportunities to do more.
Yeah.
But I think
there were like 2 or 3 opportunities I saw that maybe could have.
Yeah.
But also, we are the omniscient narrator here, right? Like, we have information the killer doesn't have. They don't have that little ticker of, you know, Gen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with the precise percentages of progress.
Yeah, I think there were definitely a few times we saw where there's like 6%, 7%, and he's sticking near the gens. And then I think really what could have happened, you know, instead of just, you know, throwing or something at the end, is he thought that, okay, there's 6, 7% on that gen. You know,
maybe he just thought he had more time than he did.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is a very risky strategy. I would almost expect that strategy to be more effective with a Spirit or something of that nature.
See, I feel like the Wraith's very continuous mobility, though, really does allow you to get... I mean, we saw how long those gens were at 0 until just the moment our killer lost focus, committed a little too hard to that chase.
Yep.
And then the survivors noted... One of the things that I thought was really interesting was that I believe multiple survivors had gotten toolboxes out of chests there, because the Ace pulled a toolbox out of the basement chest, and the Meg had one as well. So just both survivors saving those toolboxes just until the killer gave them an opportunity, right?
Yep.
Because those toolboxes are finite resources against what's effectively an infinite amount of regression, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you front load, you use those toolboxes early, they are going to help you get that gen progress a lot faster. But if you're against a killer who's just going to regress that gen again, you've wasted your resource. But holding on to it, waiting till you're like, okay, we're at 50, 60%, we got to use our toolboxes now and accelerate through that last half. I mean, that worked out.
Yeah, because especially since, I mean, pretty long ago now, there was that rework to toolboxes, right? That they used to be they used to last much longer, but have a much smaller impact on the gen progress. So toolboxes back in the day were more of a just continuously throughout the match. Gens will go a couple percent faster. Whereas nowadays, generators are much more useful in that specific situation, or sorry, generators, toolboxes are much more useful in that specific situation where you really need that burst of progress, where those charges get burned a lot faster, but for a much higher acceleration to that gen speed.
Yeah. So really what we're seeing now from, 4 a.m. Dropping on that one, RSK getting an easy 4 out, 5 points.
I wouldn't call that easy. That was a hard-fought game.
It was hard fought. I feel like the risk was lower, right?
Yeah, there were less hook stages in that game than we've typically seen.
Exactly,
but
yeah.
I would not call that game easy.
No, yeah. But, for them, getting out in that manner, getting 5 sort of points on the board here. Again, we're seeing this situation. 4 a.m. has to answer that with a 4 out, 5 points on the board. If that happens here, we are going to go to blood point values for these last 2 matches and compare the two.
Yeah, and I would be very interested in seeing. I didn't actually get to look at the post-game screen for long enough to actually count everybody's points.
Wraith got 27,000.
Wow, interesting. See, you know what? I would bet you that most of what was missing was in the devout category, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Because brutality, chaser. What's the last category? Gatekeeper.
Yes.
Because so
he held it for 9 minutes. So,
the gatekeeper emblem is actually really interesting the way that it works, because it basically gives you points for each gen that is not completed every minute.
Yes.
And so, in theory, right, the ideal way to max out your gatekeeper emblem is to keep 5 gens up for as long as possible.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you keep the game at 1 gen for an extended period of time, like we saw in that last match, that's also will eventually add up to a pretty significant gatekeeper score.
Yeah, and the big thing about gatekeepers, if you keep the survivors from popping every gen for at least 9 minutes. If you hold on to 1 gen at least until the 9th minute, then you're good. You're safe, and it kind of awards you points for that. And so that's kind of really what we're looking at there when we're looking at blood point score. The big thing here, not getting enough hooks, right? Getting enough people on hook. We saw 3, 4 maybe.
Yeah, I think it was 3 hooks.
Which out of 12, that economy doesn't work out very well in terms of awarding score. And when we see that almost, it was I believe 27.5. So seeing some points missing elsewhere, but seeing a large majority of those points missing from that category definitely might hurt them depending on the killer we get. Now, the big thing is if 4 a.m. does get a 4-man out, RSK, the way that they've played right now has indicated to me, they're getting more hooks, they're using their ability a lot. I think that they could just naturally come out on top, but they have to be sure that they're putting in work to get those blood points if it is going to be contentious. They you can't end it too fast, you can't insta down too often, right? You do have to have your chases.
Yeah, definitely that chaser emblem is definitely something that killers like Oni and Billy, not that we're probably going to see either of those.
No.
But, those insta-down killers really struggle with, because you only get half a chase.
Exactly.
Effectively, you only get half a chase.
So it's going to be really interesting to see just kind of what the pick is. Again, we're on Father Campbell's Chapel, and this is the deciding match, I would assume.
Yeah, this is it for this series. One way or the other, it ends here.
And honestly, going into this, I thought RSK was a little bit more of a shoo-in, but there just has been a sort of meeting of the minds. And like I said, the Oni from 4 a.m. really pushing RSK to their limit and getting them in, the last gen pops and just getting a few extra downs. That one was very, very close. I don't know. This could go any way. I'm not 100% sure. I hope that RSK can pull off a really commanding victory here. I think blood points, while I don't think that I will judge either team, it's kind of okay, well, you made it, but...
yeah. Very interesting loadouts from our survivors on the items. I'm very interested in seeing what the plan is there that they...
There also could be a lot of risk in that. We'll talk about that as it comes up.
Once we get into the match, we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, so we are getting a quick look here at, again, 4 a.m. is going to be going against our beautiful, beautiful Spirit from RSK. One of the best Spirits we've seen in this tournament the entire time. Consistent.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest issues we've seen just throughout this tournament with Spirit, is just the inconsistency that Spirit performances have very much been all or nothing. They've been a lot of, we've seen 4 outs, we've seen 1Ks, we've seen 4Ks with multiple gens left.
Yeah.
But, RSK's Spirit looked really, really clean.
Yeah, it looks like they really understand the mentality. They have great headphones. They know what's up. So this could be a tough one, and our Survivor perk loadout could be really difficult. Now, it is worth noting, I got a little glimpse, our Spirit is running the coveted No Way Out, No Ed.
Oh,
so
maybe they heard us.
They are prepped, and we're going to take a look at the loadouts of the Survivors here, too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you're noticing, some of our keen-eyed viewers may be seeing, is that all of the Survivors have brought toolboxes, and not just any toolbox, but Alex's toolbox, which, in case you may not be aware, Alex's toolbox is extremely ineffective at progressing generators, but very, very efficient at sabotaging hooks.
I am not sure what would compel them to do this against a Spirit.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the game plan here is that if you can deny a kill, right? If you can deny a death hook with sabotage, then that is potentially more value than the medkits could provide. Potentially.
Right.
But that's a big if.
It's a big ask because that's a great hit there from the Spirit. I mean, like, if we look at this, I mean, 4 a.m., their killer, great pick, great plays, did not crush RSK. RSK leading the board here. So 4 a.m. coming in as Survivors with the sabotage. I mean, you need every tool at your disposal to get all the heals that you can get. And so I'm a little bit confused by this. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting to note, too, is the killer hooking the Meg right next to her Ruin Totem. Because this way you can maintain pressure on both your hook and your totem simultaneously.
Exactly. Any of the gens that, like, Kate would have been on, and this is going to be an interesting trade
That's
here.
Deliverance, though. And also keep in mind the borrowed time, that 12 seconds of borrowed time lasting the exact same duration as the requirement for a safe unhook. So borrowed time 100% guaranteeing that Deliverance will activate.
Yeah, and getting 2 hooks before a gen even pops is not bad, especially with Ruin still in play. The ability to run somebody off a gen, and even if they're off it for 15 seconds, that's not bad damage to have. And then, of course, you know, the ability just to scatter these survivors. Yeah, this is really interesting here.
Well, the thing is, we know the Deliverance is there, and from that play, I would assume our Spirit knows that Deliverance is in play as well. And because that's interesting swing, but the unhook directly in front of the killer, taking a trade that early in the game is a very clear indication that that Survivor's going to have Deliverance. So the only question is, how long until it gets used? Oh, well, there it is. Maybe the recognition that the killer was far across the map, then the Deliverance procs when that hit comes, when you have confirmation of the killer's, not just their location, but also that their power's on cooldown.
We are seeing really interesting sort of map generation here, too. I would almost say identical seeding, at least on this side of the map. The same hill and the almost exact same gen spawn.
Yeah, and one thing that was interesting, something that we didn't really discuss, but was actually a phenomenal decision on like that sort of macro level from the Survivors, was for the Atom to come and work on the totem while the Kate was still sitting on hook waiting to use her Deliverance.
Yeah, this is a big deal because the Spirit might see the Deliverance and go check the totem, but knowing that like they're splitting their attention, the Kate's going to run away, the Atom's going to get away, maybe body block. I think there was a lot of coordination coming out of 4 a.m. here.
Oh yeah, no, I mean the team level coordination has been phenomenal, and the DS just about to run out. Our Survivor does not want to take the risk of the killer just waiting that 10 extra seconds and negating the decisive strike. No, especially considering that Deliverance does effectively give the killer a decisive strike timer, since the broken duration and the duration of DS are both 60 seconds exactly.
This is a really good hit here. This is going to be second hook. This is not a great spot for the team, but it's not unwinnable, right? One gen done, another gen being worked on at 63%, and then one at 34 and rising. I mean, our killer has a good amount of hooks right now. Not a bad spot to be in. They are having to shift to the other side of the map right now and maybe lock this down, seeing a second Survivor here, which means they might lose some of those more crucial gens over by Shaq.
Yeah, but especially keeping in mind that this Nia has not been hooked yet, so she still has all 3 hook states remaining. Getting that down is just not going to be a priority for the killer.
Right now, all that needs to happen is for the confirmed kill, and then that will be really, that'll make it so that 4 a.m. cannot get a 4-man escape, and then that's going to really seal their fate moving forward. So if the Spirit plays this well, I mean, that's going to be realistically it for this team.
Yeah, though, see, we are now seeing 2 survivors coming in to try and guarantee that save. We see the Meg trying to body block, doing a great job. But the thing is, I mean, what's stopping the Spirit from just going after the cage? She could phase right through you. You can't body block her.
Exactly. Even if this is a decisive strike, only 2 gens done, this is not going to be a colossal waste of time, especially just to wrap the game up.
Yeah.
Good hit at the vault there, yeah.
Yeah, and the endurance running out just in time for that window vault. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she just sits over this slug for the next 30-some seconds and waits out that decisive strike.
Yeah, this is...
Because all she needs is 1.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you would probably see the toolboxes come out for a sabotage potential or something like that, but it doesn't even seem like the survivors are moving necessarily. Well, hold on.
I think the team sort of recognizes that the killer is trying to wait out that decisive strike, because you have to assume everyone's got it. I mean, every lobby so far this tournament has had 4 decisive strikes, usually 2 to 3, potentially 4 DS Unbreakable. So you really have to play very territorially around this down. Though I'm not sure how I feel about the survivors playing so aggressively here, because you can effectively guarantee a drop if you have 2 or 3 survivors in the vicinity ready to sabotage those hooks right when the pickup comes in. But the survivors just played their hand too early.
Yeah, they really revealed themselves quite a bit too early, and realistically, I think maybe better play would just be to go ahead and sabotage it early.
Well, that sabotage only lasting 45 seconds and having, what, 2+ minutes left on the bleed out bar? Like, the thing is, I think the scenario there was you have 2 people, just don't get found. Just hard stealth, stay nearby, don't get seen, because at this point, that's game for RSK.
Yeah, that is game. Even if they get an escape right now, it's going to end this one with 6-3, and that is RSK, going to lead it. And again, RSK Spirit is one of the best Spirits we've seen in this tournament, really not dropping too many potential hits, and if they do, it's not for long, right? They're definitely not getting stunned through their phase, and definitely not over mind gaming things, breaking pallets when necessary. So, you know, really good show out from RSK. 4AM really keeping in touch and really trying to continue gripping at this. Really great hit there. Good lord.
Yeah. And even just the timing, that early swing on the hill, catching the Atom before he fell so that he would waste as much of that post-hit speed boost as possible. Just those small, extremely minor optimizations that you see at this level of play.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if RSK takes it all the way, but we have seen some holes in some of their Survivor gameplay a little bit, just with some of the great, formidable challenges that 4AM has put up against them. Again, their Oni being incredible. So no matter what, RSK moving forward, RSK put up a really good fight. Both teams put up a great fight, and 4AM is going to get knocked down to losers and maybe climb back out.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep in mind, for everyone watching at home, that this is a double elimination bracket at this point. And so if you are in the upper bracket, which with both teams presently are, you do have the ability to come back and make a run through the losers bracket and potentially even take it all.
Yeah, right now we're just seeing the honor system come out, survivors just doing gens, get the match over with as the killer confirms this kill. No reason to do much else, no reason to like drag it on or make it anything it's not.
Yeah, I mean, this game's over. I'm sure our killer has, you know, their teammates in their ears in a Discord call letting them know, yeah, this is game, you won. All you got to do is just seal it out.
Yeah, we do know that 4AM has been incredibly formidable, and going into the losers bracket, I mean, there are some great teams down there, but 4AM really, I think, coming back today and being stronger than they were last time we saw them. I think there's a chance that we see an RSK 4AM matchup later down the road, a little grudge match to kind of hang on. But for now, I mean, this is going to be kind of match as we see the 4th gen pop, 5th gen is on its way here. This survivor has about 20 seconds left on their bar. Really no reason to unhook, no reason not to, right? Just play it out.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the rest of this match is basically just a formality. In terms of the actual result of the series, it's over. I mean, beyond this, it's just a formality. We're playing it out for the sake of honor, you know?
Yeah, we do know that the gen is 99'd. They've just left it at 99%, so they are just kind of going for it at this point.
Yeah, maybe just to avoid no-ed. Oh, well, there it is. They just, yeah, I mean, there's the no-ed reveal. Not that it matters at this point. you know, like we said, the rest of this match is kind of just a formality. We're just here. Maybe we'll see something cool from the survivors. Maybe something cool from the killer.
Yeah, I mean, No Way Out still in play, which I think will be the big shocker.
My God, I forgot about No Way Out. She needs to find the Spirit needs to find the Nia if she wants that 4th stack. But I think Adam's just going to touch it, or not.
Let's kind of see what happens here. No Way Out, of course,
there it goes.
locking the survivors in, locking the exit gate from being progressed for at least a good duration of time, and extendable based on how many individual survivors you've hooked.
Yeah, and with 3 unique survivors being hooked before the exit gates were touched after being powered, it's going to be what, like 48 seconds of them being blocked?
Yeah, we see right now the Spirit hovering a locker, knowing somebody's inside. The scratch marks fairly obvious, but really just waiting out the decisive strike because, you know, No Way Out's locking the doors up.
Yeah, someone's timer's a little slow here. Because, there it goes.
And that is going to be Adam going back on hook here. That is going to be the last hook on him. 2K, but that's just enough, you know, if the other 2 make it out. They should have their door open probably within about 6 seconds. Maybe Spirit makes it there, but I think they should be able to run it out here. There's the door, yeah.
And she ran out of power, just not quite enough distance. And that's going to be GG, a 2K for our Spirit, and that is 7-2 in favor of RSK.
Yeah, a really wild set of matches, really long games. You saw 4AM really wanting to earn it and stay in, but at the end of the day, RSK's Spirit is really a strong Spirit to play against.
Yeah, and you got to keep in mind, again, they do have the potential to make a run in the losers bracket. 4AM is not out of the tournament yet. They have 1 more life remaining.
Yeah. We are going to go over here to some of the highlights of this one. Of course, our Wraith playing the long game on here, getting looped really well at the shack for most of the game here, getting a great hit on the Kate with the mind game, and going here as well, getting whiffed on.
Yeah, just a little bit impatient there, and some good footwork from the Kate to make that mistake a lot easier.
Yeah, the Make a Whiff Foundation really getting that extra donation coming through there. And we are seeing right now, again, just a lot of gen kicking. I think that's just a general highlight for the match. Good fake from the Kate. And Meg here. Oof, the Meg.
Yeah, I mean, this was the point where, like, oh, that triple eruption pop. I don't think anybody got hit by it, but I mean, regardless, just the ability to get those gens regressing remotely is so powerful. And then the good dead hard on reaction from the ace to deny that hit. I mean, he didn't get anywhere, but, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we saw really consistent good plays from these survivors the entire match. They really understood what they needed to do, where they needed to put themselves, how to really just take the hit and run in some scenarios. Something you would never really see in a public match, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is, what's really impressive to me from these survivors especially is the mental fortitude to stay disciplined in your play, to keep your good positioning and, you know, precise communication and make sure everybody's on the same page. And to not slip up for a match of that duration is really impressive.
Really good crouch tech from Nia. I don't even know if that's the official tech, but really good job from the Nia there. You know, the Spirit in a weird way has a lot fewer highlights, but their play was just so consistent, right?
Yeah, I mean, just frankly, just a shorter match, you know, leads to less clips.
Yeah, that might be what it is. But give it up, of course, for RSK. They are going to be moving on into tomorrow's matches, sort of sealing the semis and hopefully the grands. But that means we are going to be moving on to the losers bracket, seeing who progresses from there. We're going to take it to a short break. I need some water.
And we will be following that up with 4AM versus BBB.
Yeah, we'll see you guys soon. All right, and welcome back. We are just now kind of breaching the losers bracket, coming off of a really hot match between RSK and 4AM.
Yeah, that went the distance too. That went the full. I mean, that went the distance.
Yeah, they were big fans of the fourth dimension in that last match because it took some time.
I see what you did. That was cute. That was clever. I like it.
Yeah, so really we are now seeing 4AM knocked down to the losers bracket. They're going to go against BBB, but they're coming in here warm, like kind of what you were mentioning in the interim here, as they've been playing all day. So either they're exhausted or they're fired up. They're ready to make it all the way.
I mean, I know I would be a little bit tired after that series, but you got a couple minutes to rest, recharge, grab a snack, grab some water. You know, maybe now you're just warm.
Look, I think at this point, if you pick that Wraith match, if you're tired, that's on you. You know what I mean?
That's your fault.
So, realistically, there is a pretty good chance that 4AM is going to maybe, if they continue with the sort of strength that they brought out, really, I don't know, kind of scare BBB. Again, BBB is probably scrimming beforehand, but not going into the actual match. So if 4AM has worked those nerves out, they might be in a really prime position. Going into it, we've already got our map.
Yeah, we are going to be returning to what seems like we've spent a lot of the tournament here. Because, I mean, frankly, I love this map. We're going to be on Wrecker's Yard.
Yeah, Wrecker's Yard, obviously we've talked about it before. It's got the donut of disaster kind of in the middle there, and it has, you know, potential. This is the first round, right? So there are very few bans right now in place, just one from each team for the other team.
And both have been Billy.
Yeah, previously. So I don't know, things might change now with Wrecker's Yard being the first match. That's going to influence our bans, I would imagine. Nurse with double range is going to be hellish here. But
I don't want to think about that. I've played too many of those matches. I don't want to think about it.
Oni could contend here. You know, I don't know that I would ban Oni. There's a lot of potential to really keep him from his power here. So I don't know. There's a lot that, you know, we're going to see Spirit, maybe Oni, maybe
I'm expecting
Billy.
an Oni at some point, but also,
Inevitable.
like, I mean, 4AM has been, they're going to be killing first in this match.
Yeah.
And their killer play has been very, very solid. 4AM's Oni with that really, really clutch 4K in the last round. I would definitely be confident on that Oni on Wreckers. I mean, that was a winning situation for you last time. I could definitely see it happening again.
Yeah, I don't see why you really wouldn't. The interesting thing here is, are the bans going to counter that? You know, I would say 4AM is a team that doesn't get outside of their normal roster too far, right? When they played the Wraith, they played the Brine Eruption Wraith. They're not really, I mean, not that they were a bad Wraith, but they're not necessarily prepared or confident, it looks like, to take that on with specific strategies. So do they go the tried and true Oni Spirit or something of that nature?
Well, it turns out, as we're seeing on our screen now, they are going to be bringing... Wait, I'm not sure. It seems like we may have the wrong name on screen right now for our end. But we are going to be bringing the Nurse into play here.
Yeah, 4AM coming in, killing with the Nurse here. BBB going to be surviving. You know, out the gate, tough match, right? Especially since 4AM has been able to warm up. There's a good potential here for them to snowball really hard against BBB. I don't know. It's been a little dicey. Nurse has been less than consistent in this tournament so far.
Yeah, but the thing is, the last time we saw a Nurse on Wrecker's Yard, they had such a absolutely dominant early game, and the only reason that they had to let off the gas and not just win the game on the spot was because of the threat of the blood point tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Because if they won the game too quickly, they would actually end up losing.
Yeah. And they deflated their pressure because of that. So that barrier not being present here is going to be interesting, right? Because, again, the point system lends itself to all or nothings, right? It doesn't matter how many gens you get done. It matters how many people escape, right?
Yep.
And so the hook states don't matter. Can you get somebody in the basement? And as a Nurse, if you can get someone in a Wrecker's basement, that's going to be a tough game to win.
Yeah, I mean, and especially considering just a little bit maybe less impactful necessarily than the basement hook itself, but as a Nurse on Wreckers, if you hook someone in basement, you can blink out of that basement to basically anywhere on the map.
Exactly, especially if you have range add-ons, right?
Which, I mean, I expect to see. Considering that the only restriction on add-ons for killers is you can either bring one iridescent add-on or two of any other color.
Yep.
I'm expecting either double range or purple range green recharge. That's been kind of the standard we've been seeing in our handful of Nurse matches.
Yeah, yeah. And so, realistically, I don't think we've seen really a strong Nurse from 4 a.m. before. And so I'm interested here of, in my opinion, if I see 2 recharge add-ons, that might show a little bit of a inconsistency problem, maybe a little bit of fear of whiffing a little bit, right?
You do have to keep in mind, though, that the first Nurse of the tournament was 4 a.m. in that very, very first match where we saw Sadako on one side and the Nurse on the other. I believe it was 4 a.m. if I remember correctly.
To be fair, I feel like you can come in and flex after a Sadako match and just bring anything you want and still kind of get enough points to just sail on through. But
yeah, I mean, it's a little tough because, that was a tough game. The Sadako definitely really did struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
To actually, if I remember right, was that game versus BBB? Is this a rematch we have on our hands?
I don't know. I'll have our tech team look into it, I guess. You guys
because if I remember correctly, that first game. Oh, it was. Sorry, never mind. That was the original, the forfeit on the original match.
Oh,
so it was not. It was not 4 a.m. versus BBB. I am misremembering because there's been so much Dead by Daylight passed through my eyes the last week or two.
Well, and honestly, when you're sitting here and you're watching Oni, Billy, Oni, Spirit, Billy, Oni, at some point they all just become one giant memory.
Yes, but Bill Oni. God, that would be a terrifying killer, wouldn't it? Imagine a spirit with a chainsaw.
I mean, at some point that could be Dredge, right? It's just a different version of Dredge, a multiverse Dredge. Yeah. So we are loading back in. We did have some match cancellation errors come through. We are loading back into this match. Again, 4 a.m. playing Killer. They picked Nurse. I don't think they're going to be swapping. So.
Yeah, I think once you sort of lock that in, you're kind of stuck with it. So, I mean... Yeah. I'm excited to see some more Nurse gameplay. I mean, it's definitely been a bit of a change of pace from a lot of tournaments that I've seen in the past where, prior to the introduction of sort of the killer pool concept, you tended to see a lot of Nurse and Spirit because you could just bring them all the time. Why not? Yeah. And so it's been a while since those days. So it's kind of nice every once in a while to see that high skill Nurse play. That's a treat.
Yeah, I'm really interested here. At the end of the day, we are going to start getting into that sort of consistent echelon of like perks, where we're going to see just Pop, Ruin, Corrupt. I think Ruin actually might go by the wayside. We might see like Pop, Corrupt, and then other more consistent features because Ruin. I don't know. You burn 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds at the beginning of the match. It's not time necessarily wasted. It's just not very effective.
Yeah, though if I had to make a prediction as to our Killer's build in this first match, I would say Corrupt, Pop, Tinkerer, and I believe Noed was the fourth perk.
Yeah. I could definitely see that Noed with Nurse because we are, again, working with a Nurse that their post-blink attack is not a special attack. That is a basic attack, and so you're going to see that Noed proc just on any hit from a Nurse. And that is not necessarily easy to contend with, especially if you don't have the time to go through totems like we saw previously in our Wraith match where there was nothing but time.
Yeah, they had all the time in the world.
So we are loading into match now. Obviously, Wrecker's Yard up. This is a smaller map. Just as a sort of recap, it does have just that shack in the middle, some filler pallets around it, and then the stronger tiles on the outer edge of that. There's a lot of potential for linkage here, but that doesn't matter quite so much against a Nurse, right? The ability to use pallets is a little bit moot.
Yeah, I mean, though there is definitely still some value in pallets against a Nurse, every once in a while you can get one of those situations where you sort of bait her back and forth across the pallet, and she has to commit to the swing eventually. And if you can, have that combination of prediction and reaction to land that stun, especially when that stun is followed by her fatigue, that can get you some decent value. I mean, maybe not so much against a Nurse with range, but, it's something.
We are seeing our survivors waiting out what we kind of had predicted here. We are seeing Corrupt, Noed, Tinkerer, Pop. So we are seeing the survivors really just waiting for that Corrupt intervention to be gone, sort of trying to fool the Nurse into double backing, being in a disadvantageous area. Nia actually just running right to the gen. Maybe, knowing that there's a chase happening right now, not a bad play.
Yeah, that first hit coming out onto the Quentin.
Not a bad spot for Quentin to be in. Quentin does need to try to keep this nurse sort of sequestered into this corner here. She's going to blink down, but she blinks way too far. Yeah, she didn't look down nearly enough.
Yeah, see, that's going to be a lot of distance, but the thing is, with the range add-ons, she may be able to make that distance up right away, instead deciding to actually break off and go contest a generator.
Yeah, not a bad idea. I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's a little bit of risk in that. We do see 2 survivors on 1 gen early against the nurse.
That's Tinkerer going off, too.
Yeah.
Ooh,
and
the missed swing on Ed.
That is a little bit interesting to see 2 survivors grouped up on 1 gen this early, especially against the nurse. We do see the locker play.
Yeah, important to keep in mind if you're wondering why that's the case, that Kate has Prove Thyself.
That is an interesting pick, actually, for tournaments. Prove Thyself only saving you a handful of seconds across multiple gens. A little bit riskier, right, when you consider things that could have been brought in its place to maybe make the game just a little bit more less codependent.
2 short blinks, though, from the nurse, allowing both of the survivors that she was having pressure on to make a decent bit of distance, and now a bit of prediction is going to have to come in if she wants to convert this chain of blinks into a hit.
4 a.m. obviously maybe showing a little bit of fatigue after
range.
the amount of matches they've played today, because right now 1 gen gone, another 2 gens at 50. Not a single hook for the nurse. That is really a different type of game to see.
Yeah, and interesting to see the Nia dead harding the swing just in time, but notice where the Nia is running to, right? She's taking the nurse away from the gens that her teammates are working on.
It took a little bit of time to get into this sort of groove, but it does look like these survivors are falling into place here in terms of kind of maybe warming up a little bit, right? And trying to get their sort of thinking caps on, really trying to fall into their positions and play this the way that they should.
Oh, and this is now, I think, what, 4 missed blink chains in a row from the nurse? This is potentially disastrous with 3 gens being popped.
Yeah, this is a big deal for the nurse, and honestly, it would be really easy to sort of feel the jitters. You really have to bring yourself back down and focus up and really try to get a hook at this point. It's not necessarily over. There are 0 gens with extra progress. So, you know, we've always talked about this right now. When you're down to 2 gens remaining, that's just kind of when the match warms up. But against a nurse, this is pretty unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've at any point seen a nurse get 3 gens done before their first hook yet in this tournament.
Yeah, this is pretty incredible right now. Good first down finally there. Good prediction from the nurse, and we're going to see if they can kind of bring it back up. They hopefully aren't feeling the pressures of 3 gens too far. Again, with Pop Goes the Weasel in the bag, I think they have a lot of leeway to still make this happen for them. But they just have to kind of dial in those blinks a little bit, get that second blink going a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, strategically, the nurse has not necessarily made any huge blunders yet. It's just been purely those small micro-mechanical issues.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing about nurse. Big risk, big reward, knowing that you, if you whiff the attack, ooh, that could be... That's Quentin. Does Quentin have a Deliverance in the pocket to make that play?
I see he does have a Borrowed Time equipped, so a Deliverance would not surprise me in the slightest. Oh, baiting out the Dead Hard
really
and the follow-up
hit.
Okay, but you see what I mean? It's all high risk, high reward, right? You land those blinks, you wait out that Borrowed Time, you wait out the Dead Hard. No decisive strike there.
And they're going to let the Tinkerer go on the other gen, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think defending the 3 gen, because they have the gen here, the gen in, I don't know if it's in the long wall, short wall, or just near it, and then the gen in Shack. That seems to be sort of the 3 gen of choice here for our killer. Kind of just letting that gen by the tanker truck go.
Yeah, if they are not careful, I mean, they've let enough go that this match could slip out from under them. Getting that Tinker, or getting the pop on the gen in the corner, they are looking to try to secure this kill against the Nia. And the play here for Nia may have been to hold on to a decisive strike, since we did not see one come out.
There's the Dead Hard. Forcing out, see, that's one of those really key aspects of playing against Nurse, especially if you have Dead Hard equipped, is to not let her get on top of you with her first blink, right? Forcing her to use both. Because on that second blink, she is fully committed, and you can use that resource pretty safely.
Yeah, I mean, realistically against Nurse, if they get that first blink and then you Dead Hard, they use that second blink, they sew it up pretty quick.
And that's all the gens done.
Exit gates powered against 4AM's Nurse. BBB really coming out here. They've practiced this week. Really solid there, trying to get some no-ed value here, leaving that slug on the ground.
Yeah, and that is the no-ed revealed to everyone else, but the totem broken immediately.
BBB did not come to play. What an incredible start for this team. 4 a.m. maybe feeling the fatigue of having to play several longer matches in a row.
Yeah, and it seems like the rest of the survivors are going to leave, and we are going to... Oh. Yeah, I was going to say, we are going to see that Nia does have her Unbreakable.
Attempted a hatch play there, maybe.
Yeah, maybe hoping for the Unbreakable, the immediate Dead Hard, and then potentially making distance to hatch off the Mist swing, but, I mean... How far are you going to get against a Nurse?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
this Nia basically ran the Nurse for the entire game. I mean, it took a couple of hook states to do it, but I think this Nia basically had one continuous chase.
You know, this would be something that you might see a little bit more in a sort of solo queue match, right? Of like, oh, I got to tunnel somebody out so I can have more command over the match, and then spending the entire match trying to tunnel somebody out, right?
Yeah, which, I mean, just phenomenal play from the Nia to keep that chase going as long as possible, and the rotations from the rest of her team, right? The communication and the map awareness that it takes to kind of coordinate the team. And because remember, not one single time did that Nia run to a generator that was being worked on.
Nope. No.
That chase was perfectly positioned to maximize the distance between the Nurse and her team.
Exactly. Yeah, this was a really good set of plays, right? And we see that at the end of the day, the Nurse not being able to get that first hook, just chasing somebody and then having to leave, and then chasing somebody, wasting several minutes of time, it did hurt them. You know, it did really cause a problem, especially when we see medkits in play, right, where somebody's... You get a hit on them, but they don't stay injured. They heal up, and then they get right back to work. You're not even really doing a lot. And as the Nurse, like other killers in a first chase, you might get the pallet out, you might do this, you might... Nurse doesn't need to.
Yeah, I mean, those first chases, if you're playing a killer that's not Nurse, basically, are just as much about burning resources as they are about actually downing the survivor.
Yeah, and so as Nurse, knowing that you've wasted all that time and gotten absolutely nothing, right? No resources gone, maybe half of a medkit gone, that's it. That is really, really difficult. BBB coming out here and just being really staunch against 4 a.m. And I'm kind of excited to see if BBB answers with a strong killer and just dominates, kind of throws him against the wall like Meg in the Nemesis trailer.
Oh, man, yeah. Yeah, just reaching through the wall and just, yeet, you're out of here.
Exactly. I'm really interested to see what happens. BBB, really, I was a little bit hesitant, I guess, going into this.
Yeah, I mean, because we haven't really gotten to see them much.
No, we saw them a little bit last week. You know, they had to sort of, they kicked themselves into the losers bracket, right? They could not play at a specific time, and then we saw them play a little bit last week, and their matches were great. But after seeing RSK today in 4 a.m., I had expected BBB to be a bit rougher around the edges, and there was a little bit at the beginning I was questioning. It worked out for them, and I can't tell if that is because of 4 a.m.'s fatigue or because of BBB's sort of expert level plays, but whatever it is, I mean, it'll continue to sort of manifest and show as we go through this match and, you know, at least the next two after that.
Yeah, and also important to keep in mind, just a little update on the score, with 3 survivors escaping from BBB on the first half of map 1, Wrecker's Yard, we are at 3-1 in favor of BBB, because again, 1 point per kill or escape, plus 1 point on top of that if you get all 4.
Yeah. Also keep in mind that throughout the stream today, we are going to have giveaways going on in the individual chats, different codes to use to get you blood points and other sorts of wonderful little things inside of DBD Mobile. So please keep your eyes peeled to any pinned messages and any giveaways going on from moderators or the channel owners. There's a lot of stuff going on today, but also tomorrow and Sunday. So if you can't fully pay attention today, there's a lot of opportunities. Thank you guys for being here and paying attention. Obviously, give a follow DBD Mobile at DBD Mobile on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I would imagine, etc. Just keep in contact there as the updates roll out, and the updates have actually been frequent for DBD Mobile, and we just had one a few days ago actually. So
yeah, they actually, I believe it was one of the really key selling points of this update was a significant rework to the control scheme of flashlights to make them maybe a little bit more intuitive to use.
Yeah. Yep, and then Mori's were obviously changed the week before last, and so a lot of stuff, constant work happening behind the scenes to be sure that things are updated, feedback is taken, so we appreciate you guys playing. So that being said, we're loading in 4 a.m. versus BBB, of course. BBB, really good start as Survivor, swapping over to the killer side. We don't really know what the ban system looks like for these two.
I believe we're going to be seeing a Spirit here once we load in. I did see just a little flash of that
glimpse.
screen. That I do believe, and we now have confirmation from production that we are going to be seeing a Spirit in this second half of match 1.
Yeah, we really are interested here because Spirit, especially on that first and second day last week, looking at Spirit was one of the most inconsistent killers we saw, struggling to get downs, over mind gaming, not breaking pallets. And so I would assume if you're at this level, right, you are a little bit more commanding, you are a little bit more confident, I guess, in your abilities and understanding how to make those survivors move where you want them to.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, we do sort of see a little bit of a scanning of the map at the start. We see a pick that I was not expecting to see, Strider.
Yeah,
coming
old
out.
School Strider too, right?
Yeah.
The anti-Iron Will. This might be a confidence pick. It also might be a lack of confidence pick, but right now, good first hit coming out from the Spirit just on the basic mind games.
Yeah, and even something small, as we're watching her phase, you see that there's that just a very, very small thing that you see good Spirit players do is that they're watching the ground in front of them as they're phasing. They're looking for that grass moving, right? To try and guarantee the exact position of the survivor, to not exclusively rely on those audio cues.
We do say 4 a.m. hopping in the locker there. A little bit of a strange pick. No DS. Nobody's been hooked yet, so maybe misclick, maybe mistap, but that is going to be first hook for Spirit. Good job on the chase there.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, that's very clever. That's very clever. Look at that. So you notice they started the phase to show the survivor on hook the animation reset, right? But staying in place to actually make the other survivors maybe not have correct information about where she's going, right?
Yeah.
That the survivor on hook would call out to their team, oh, the killer's phasing, she's going away. When actually, no, she's sitting right here.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, knowing that they got a 1 and 3, they just need to secure just the 2 kills to make it clean on this one. And with only 1 gen done, a second one in the works, all they need to do is really camp this person out, and they should have enough time, especially with no way out, to continue making this work for them. As long as NOED isn't worked on preemptively, they should be able to make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm a little bit of nodders. I'm expecting them to try and confirm second stage, but maybe just getting a little too far away from the hook here. And I don't know if Adam has endurance from a borrowed time on the Meg, or if he's just confident because of his decisive strike. But it wouldn't surprise me if we see the Spirit just sort of eat the DS and catch right back up to him, but I don't know.
We'll see. It looks like they might go put pressure on the Meg. The big risk in camping this early and just kind of standing there is now that if they can be distractible long enough, they could lose a lot of the pressure that made camping viable. And so they have to be really careful here.
Yeah, I mean, a third gen reaching the 75% mark, and another one just about to be half. So a not insignificant choice for our Spirit to sort of spend that time, because Dead by Daylight at its core is a game about time efficiency, and that missed phase from our Spirit going to have a pretty significant impact on that time efficiency.
Ooh, this Meg should go down here. Dead hard, maybe? Nope.
No dead hard. She's got a sprint burst.
Yeah, she does have Deliverance. That is the reason she was the designated unhooker. And honestly, Spirit might know that, but there's not a lot you could do about it. You do need to be working on kind of whittling these survivors away and keeping them busy.
Yeah, Deliverance is one of those perks that it doesn't really matter if you know they have it or not. Like, yes, you could maybe like predict the timing of the Deliverance and come back and hit them right away when they get off the hook, but you can't really stop them from using it. There's really nothing you can do to prevent the Deliverance from activating in the first place. And you know, in a coordinated environment like this, you can expect at least a decisive strike along with it, probably an unbreakable too. I don't remember the Meg's exact build from looking at her. I'm sure there was an Iron Will in there, so that's one less perk slot to have an unbreakable, but
yeah, this is an interesting spot to be in. We do, ooh, great phase there.
Yeah, she really needs to find the Atom, though.
Yeah, the big thing here is that again, that early game camp coming down to the Meg, I think, honestly, I maybe would have hover-handed over the Atom, knowing that the Meg was maybe greeting for Deliverance and just waited his DS out, get that second hook.
Yeah, and also the Sprint Burst coming into play, too, from the Meg to get that unhook originally, because she was sort of crouching a little bit far away, maybe a little further than the killer expected somebody to be able to get the unhook from, but then as soon as she looks away, the Meg just zooms in with Sprint Burst and gets that unhook.
Really good job linking these two tiles together. This is what we talked about before. Some of these filler palettes really excellently link with other portions of the map to make a very, very tough spot to be in. And the Meg obviously trying to get away, create some distance. Good job as the Spirit kind of mind games themselves for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, you really do just have to correctly predict this. And seeing the red light kind of duck back behind that wall, the Meg recognizes what the Spirit is doing and doubles back just in time. Ooh, maybe the Meg recognizing maybe a tendency to slightly over-predict in our Spirit here.
Yeah, our Spirit coming off with a strong sort of opening, but just having a hard time exit gates being
that's
done.
the last gen.
If they can close this this chase out, No Way Out and Noed are in play, but right now chasing the Nia, who has not been hooked yet. This is going to be tough. They might be able to get a extra kill. I don't predict this getting any further than just the one extra kill, which is going to mean it's going to be a tied game potentially.
Yeah, and especially with only 2 tokens available for No Way Out, that's going to be 36 seconds of the exit gates blocked. So I don't know if they have time. I mean, they can make their way back across the map, try and maybe make something happen here. Oh, wait.
Ooh,
wow.
The additional hit there, the volume on that Strider.
Yeah, especially because keeping in mind that Strider does also increase the volume of healthy breathing.
Now, we do know they are bringing them back right here to where they know the other survivor is down. And the interesting thing to do here is to actually sort of hook and then just sort of camp the slug, wait for them to pop Unbreakable. We do know Noed's gone. And we do see the Unbreakable kind of pop up here.
Yeah, and especially considering that you now have 2 survivors on Death Hook, but nobody else has been hooked a single time. This is definitely a bit of a tough situation for our Spirit, because, I mean, how do you confirm more than 1 kill here?
What's interesting, we saw BBB so confident at the beginning, the nodders at the gens being completed and now being completely reversaled, combo breakered, if you will, and just having a tough time now keeping any sort of grip on this.
Yeah, oh, the body block from the Ace preventing the grab, potentially not preventing the down, though, but this Meg is the other survivor who has been previously hooked. And interesting that they're not even, they're not even entertaining the idea of a Meg potentially having Unbreakable. They're just taking that hook, getting that guaranteed pressure, and then they're going to go try and maybe snowball a bit.
Yeah, really interesting to see them try to, at the end of the day, if they get just the 1 kill, it is going to go 4-4 for both of them, which means this is, pretty inconclusive. And that's not a bad position. You might want to hold that, as you warm up, as you kind of gauge your opponent. BBB, again, coming into a team that's played rigorously all day and needing to sort of size them up a little bit. I think it's best that they try to secure this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely expecting the squad to roll up here. You have 3 healthy survivors, and the thing is, again, since the point format is exclusively based on kills, you can afford to trade some hooks a little bit if you're smart about who goes down.
Now, we do know the Ace has not been hooked yet, and we have not much of an inkling as to what their build could be, so the Ace actually being the one to potentially trade here. Well, we do see Nia
getting
actually.
hit.
Yeah.
So now the only healthy survivor being Adam. But it's also important to keep in mind that I'm pretty sure everybody has Iron Will, actually, as I've been kind of paying attention to this game and the way that they're kind of playing around each other. I believe everybody has Iron Will, except the Spirit. You can't have that.
Let's take a look here. Ace playing this palette really, really well, being so patient as the Spirit literally just waits for their power to get back. Sort of relying on that a little bit, that palette being just enough of an obstacle to allow a few body blocks to come out if they're not careful.
Yeah, and the Ace just going to die in the corner, going to go waste some time, maybe try and get just that little bit closer to that exit gate on the other side of the map, because this is sort of a situation where if you're the survivors, your sort of ideal outcome is, yeah, you can afford to trade a couple of hooks, right? Ace is on his first hook, Nia hasn't been hooked at all, but your goal is to get closer and closer to the gate by trading those hooks and make it so you have less and less distance to cover in order to actually escape.
Exactly, yeah, especially if your team can body block you out or something of that nature, right? We do see a flashlight coming out of the basement here, which could be real spicy if they can get that unhooked. The Spirit may not see that coming if Nia can kind of reserve themselves, stay back a little bit.
Just like don't let her see that flashlight in your hand. They won't expect it.
That might be, you know.
Oh, well, they've seen the flashlight.
Okay, they've traded. So Meg is apparently the beamer haver in this particular relationship. We do see Meg coming in. Good unhook. Won't be interrupted. And
yeah, the Spirit doing a really good job of getting around the hitbox of the Survivor on hook there. But just the cacophony of Survivor sounds in front of her.
And that's a borrowed time.
The borrowed time.
Wow, that is incredible. And I think that should have kind of ushered him out the door. Yeah, that is going to be...
Yeah, this will be 4.
That's a 4 out for him, kind of coming back and commanding this in just a slight lead.
I'm not sure where Adam's going.
I don't think Adam knows where Adam's going.
Yeah, I mean, he was very much just in the gate. I think he's just having some fun here. He's just, you know, doing a little shenanigans, a small amount of tomfoolery, if you will.
Yeah, and this is, wow, incredible. 4 a.m. putting 5 points on the board. That's going to be 6-3. You know, BBB just putting on such a strong start and then maybe getting a little overconfident, actually, in this one. And we saw the nodders when the first gen kind of went off.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that surprise unhook from Meg in just that moment of overconfidence was sort of the moment where everything started to go south for our Spirit.
Exactly, yeah. Wow, what an interesting play. Good job to both 4 a.m. BBB. 4 a.m. is going to sort of clinch the wrecker's yard, if you will, as we're going to move into our second set. That's going to be 2 more bans coming from each team towards each team, which might, I don't know, with Spirit not being that potent in that particular set, I don't know, we might see Billies and Onis continuously banned just to make those matches easier. Spirit not being as sort of imposing of a force as we maybe anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting to see that, like, when played at, like, this high of a level, when you see the prevalence of those Iron Wills forcing the Spirit to guess just as much as the Survivors have to, whereas, you know, in a world where Iron Will is not a 100%, you know, audio dampening, the Survivor is at a distinct information disadvantage relative to the Spirit, because the Spirit has environmental cues, right? They can see the grass moving, they can hear your footsteps, they can hear you. Yep. Where you get potentially in some other hypothetical world only a general direction cue as to where the spirit could be. Yeah, I think that's the big thing there. Now we're gonna move it over to highlights. Obviously, the nurse getting a few good hits here. Great dead hard from the Nia though. Yeah, again, a great example of what I had mentioned before, where if you can force the nurse to use both of her blinks, she is so much more vulnerable to those abilities.
Waiting it out on that one, that's kind of a perfect example, getting that second blink just to catch up after the dead hard. And we're going to see, again, another great dead hard. This Nia was just really slipping through her fingers the entire match.
Yeah, I mean, those dead hards, just creating those extra health states, extending those chases by a little bit longer each time. And you know, at this level, when your teammates are playing efficiently and actively doing gens and not just crouching around in a corner or searching the basement chest for fun, a couple of seconds can make a very, very big difference.
Now we do move over to the Spirit, getting a good first sort of chase against the Atom, but really the Meg juicing the Spirit into an early grave, it looks like, playing really well against these pallets. This Nia playing really well as well, getting down with no ed there, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the Survivor is just doing a really good job of calling out that just very slight tendency to over-predict that they had noticed in those first couple chases.
Really good hit there around the corner, and then going for the attempted trade here, unfortunately, incredible use of the fact that they're sort of clustered. There were 3 potential people to be down there, and it turns out they popped up right on the ace, and procs borrow time here, which gives them endurance right on out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, those moments that's what those tools are for, right? You bring the borrowed time because sometimes you're living on borrowed time.
Yes.
That wasn't even a pun. I don't know why I'm doing finger guns.
The good news, I mean, and that goes back to what you're talking about that mid-match, though, is the idea of as you do these hook trades, like, okay, I'll go down, I'm going to unhook you, you're forcing that killer closer and closer to exit gates in that case. that borrow time, ushering him literally right out the door, but that wouldn't have been quite so possible had that been further into the map.
Yeah, because that initial hook was like all the way deep in that corner, like basically as far as possible from both gates.
Exactly. So really big plays there coming from the survivors, really understanding how to play against that Spirit, and the Spirit not playing necessarily poorly, but just having a hard time keeping up with some of those survivors who are playing a little bit more safe pre-throwing the pallet and things of that nature.
Yeah, and when you're pre-throwing a pallet against a phasing Spirit, it's very much a guess. It's a 50-50 on both sides, right? Yeah. The survivor has to guess which side is the Spirit going to come from. The Spirit has to guess which side is the survivor going to drop the pallet on, or are they going to drop the pallet at all?
Yeah, and that's the big thing about Spirit. We've seen that inconsistency we've talked about of Spirit either dominating, getting no kills, maybe getting a 1K. But when we see this ban system layering, we are seeing those insta-down killers like Billy and Oni just being pushed to the side, right? Forcing the killers to play more inventively, right? Insta-down hatchets and things of that nature. So
that was a wild game. I'm just thinking back on that Eerie Head game. That was.
I don't think we see that again.
No, I doubt it. I mean, I feel like that's the sort of thing that it works best because it's a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can because replicating it, right? I don't know. I think if you're finals, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean,
right?
if it's sort of like a Hail Mary, you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Let's bring out the Eerie Head Huntress.
Right. Yeah. So
especially because the finals are going to be a best of 5.
Yes.
So say we go to Game 5, right? Last match of the finals. You've banned Billy, you've banned Oni, you've banned Nurse, you've banned Spirit. Game 5, Saga. You ban... yeah, I don't know.
Huntress, Plague?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Plague and Hag bans come out before Huntress, even with the knowledge that Eerie Head could be in play.
True, yeah, we've heard of Hag bans, yeah. It's not necessarily off the table, yeah. We are going to be digging in real soon into what our next map is going to be as our 2A and 2B matches get warmed up here. I'm really fascinated to see, again, the psychology of what's going on. What's the map pick? And then what are the teams most afraid of given that map, right? Are we going to see a Blood Lodge that bans Billy because it's wide open and easy? I'm really fascinated to see if we see any more Cowshed or anything of that nature.
Well, I don't think we ever saw Cowshed. I mean,
we saw the realm of. Yeah. I don't like it.
So I was going to say, imagine voluntarily sending yourself to Cowshed in a tournament of this scale.
Iridescent Head Huntress, man. You know what I mean? Just
yeah, I mean, never thought we'd see that either. No. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, so we are going to go ahead and throw it to some video footage real fast, some commercials. We will be right back with you as we get these lobbies set up. All right, and we're back. We're here. We're ready to dive into really pretty, I think, a hard match for these teams to go into. 4 a.m. versus BBB. 4 a.m. kind of having a rough start, but coming back around, and BBB really has to show up for this next one to really make something happen. You know, it's been interesting to have them involved. They've had to forfeit, and then they're losers, and both of these are kind of, you know, comeback kids, if you will. But we do have info on the next map. It's one of your favorites, I feel like, at this point.
I mean, probably, I would say this might be my favorite map in the whole game. It's a bit of a toss-up, but we are going to be going to Coal Tower. This is a map that is widely regarded as one of the more balanced, so I'm kind of curious to see how that affects our killer picks and bans.
Yeah, Coal Tower is a map that is similar to Wreckers in its size. It's not particularly large, but it does have a main building, though that main building's not terribly imposing. It's enough of an obstacle with its windows and breakable doors that it could be a problem for specific killers. Now, if we see like something like a Nurse, that's going to change a little bit, because we do know that both teams have banned the other team from playing Oni. So we're seeing those stacking bans really come through. Interested to see what we see here. Coal Tower is very much one of those maps that has stuff all along the edges, and then it just has this weird center that could be a hill or just junk.
It'll usually, they'll have like 1 or 2 pallets in the middle of the map, because there's that log pile that takes up like 2 tiles worth of space.
Yeah, and it does nothing. So,
well, I mean, hey, it's full of wood. You know, I'm sure they have plenty of manufacturing stuff.
I mean, with all the pallets getting smashed, right?
Yeah, right. Like, you got to make the new pallets from something. Because I mean, like, how do you think the entity refills the pallets after each match? What do you think? It's magic?
So diving into it now, what we're really looking at is we have to have BBB come forward and kind of 5-0 this one, I feel like, and really be pretty dominant, and then make a very strong defensive maneuver, right, as Survivor.
Yeah, I mean, BBB needs a minimum point differential of 3 in this match. So they need to come away with at least 3 more points.
That's just a tie, right?
Yeah, they need 3 more points than 4 a.m. on this second map to tie the series and go to Game 3. And if they get 4 or more, then they come home with the win.
Yeah, so it's very, very tight. They can't afford to lose too much. They can't afford to drop their pressure as killer too much. And then while they're playing Survivor, they really can give up a person, right? Because the potential that somebody gets camped and tunneled out is not low.
I mean, this is a competitive environment, right? You can't afford to play nice here.
Exactly. So there's a lot of pressure on this team. 4 a.m. getting knocked to the losers bracket and then sweeping it really hard. So far, right? Again, a little bit of a startup time, a little bit of a warm-up, but their Survivor team has proven that they are more than capable. And that's what I'm a little bit worried about, right? 4 a.m.'s killer, the Nurse, not as consistent as we would have hoped for, but I don't know. We'll have to kind of see what happens here, see how things churn out. Maybe it was just a warming up process for BBB as well.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be very curious to see what killer comes out here. I mean, we've been seeing Nurse with the range add-ons. Yeah. And interestingly enough, it does seem as if those range add-ons also affect her second blink, which is not traditionally how that works. So it's going to be interesting to see that sort of how much, if you know, in this hypothetical world, the Nurse does come through. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that mobility affects the way this map is played.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. It's similar to Wreckers, right? But kind of like what we talked about, Wreckers has that basement centralized, which makes Nurse and Iridescent Head Huntress and all of these things a lot more viable. But now on Coal Tower, there is a good chance that that basement is either in main building or in basement.
Which are on opposite sides of the map.
Exactly. There is no sort of easy centralization happening here, which makes defending it a little bit difficult. But it also makes the potential to sort of go right from the basement to wherever you want also non-existent.
It's also important to keep in mind, though, that the tightest 3-gen on Coal Tower does spawn at the main building.
It does.
So if you get that main building basement spawn, you get a hook in there early, and that 3-gen is not broken, that could create a very, very difficult situation for our survivors. Especially considering sometimes you get a 4th-gen just like right out front of that main building.
Right, and this is one of the things we talk about. We keep going back to it is like, yeah, you're playing versus another team, but to some degree, you're also playing against RNG, where you spawn, how spread out the survivor spawn.
Like the layout of the map.
The map layout and the gen spread, the basement spawn, all these things that feel random and sometimes frustrating to go against are also kind of the spice of life for DBD. If it was the same map seed every time, the same obstacles, I just don't know that this game would be nearly as enjoyable. There's something great about spawning in and having to take that lay of land.
Yeah, and especially one of the biggest things that really keeps DBD fresh is that variety, right? It's that the whole cast of killers, you never know who you're going to be up against.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
and even beyond that, it's that everybody plays their killer a little bit differently too, right? There isn't necessarily like a standard set in stone. This is what everyone's going to do when I play the killer.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many variables in Dead by Daylight, like you had said, from the map to the layout of the map to the gen spread to the character you're up against to the person who's playing them. There's so much that can change from game to game. Exactly.
Yeah, and that spice is really what's hard to determine kind of what these... I mean, beyond even just playing and making mistakes, making the wrong judgment call. I mean, there is so much random sort of luck and chance that goes into these matches, as well as skill. Really, your skill is trying to rein in those random chances and trying to manipulate those to your favor as much as you can, really.
Yeah, if you get 6 long walls versus 6 TL walls... yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot that you can do about that. But, it comes down to over the course of time, right, and over multiple matches and over a career as a player, right, those things will even out. Sometimes you get the 6 long walls, sometimes you get the 6 TL walls. And the skill is making the best of what you got.
Exactly. So we are going to be loading in here very, very shortly. And yeah, really, I think that's what we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for as we load into Cold Tower. Our first time seeing it in this tournament. I want to know what that looks like. And we are a little bit surprised here. We are going to see a hag on Cold Tower, which is not bad if they can get that right RNG.
Yeah, if they get, like we had talked about, if they get that main building basement spawn and that 3 or potentially even 4-gen, a hag could be very, very difficult for 4 AM to deal with here.
We have seen 2 hags in this tournament so far. One hag really kind of struggled to keep that pressure, hooking more around gens and hooks. And we did see a commanding hag on the Disturbed Ward map, actually getting a lot of those double hits, right? Hitting, teleporting, hitting again very quickly. And based on the skin on this hag, I would imagine that this is a hag that we have kind of seen tested a little bit. Now, I do think we might have a relic in the map, so we might have our tech team take a look at that. We do have something on Fung's belt that does not look like an item that I've ever seen. A booklet of some sort, so we might take a look at that here. But we do see the Survivor starting 2 on a gen right now, a little bit, again, something I would have considered risky, but worked out for them last time. Let's take a look here. And it looks like our hag is setting up their web pretty far away near that kind of main building, kind of what we talked about before. And Fung burning that sprint burst pretty early there.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see exactly what it is that this hag's game plan is, because of course we do see the corrupt coming into play. About halfway elapsed now, almost 1 minute on the clock in this game. We see sloppy agitation and Noed as well. So it seems like there is definitely a bit of a plan in mind, at least with one of those perks.
Yeah, agitation being sort of the basement perk, if you will, right? Just giving extra time and speed to get a survivor into a basement. Ooh, good hit there on the Fung there. Yeah, I'm not really sure what we're seeing on the Fung's belt. That is, I've never seen that cosmetic item before, but hag not faking placing the traps. This looks like what our hag is trying to do, really trying to psych survivors out, force them to crawl and slow down.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit of gaslighting from this girl boss.
We are seeing a good teleport and a hit right there on what it looks like the Meg, and we aren't seeing too much of the web, if you will, the hag is set down, be disturbed.
Yeah, I mean, letting her get a bunch of traps out very early in the game can create a very dangerous position for these survivors later.
Now we do see with Sloppy Butcher, it looks like this Fung is actually kind of in a dangerous spot right now, not fully having line of sight to the Hag, not knowing exactly where that trap might be. Leaving the loop is a smart play there, I think, in that case.
Yeah, recognizing the sound of the Hag placing that trap and just saying, nope, no thank you, I'm not taking that risk.
Exactly, which, if that isn't appropriately called out to the team, that could be very dangerous for them later on in the match. We do see the Meg healing out through Sloppy, going to waste a little bit of that med kit.
Yeah, especially that Sloppy applying both Mangled and Hemorrhage, which Hemorrhage making you bleed more, and Mangled adding a 25% slowdown to all healing actions. Oh, maybe a little bit of a ping issue there, getting into range just as the trap is no longer triggered.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of a stutter there from the Hag, trying to teleport, just not really, sort of hitching almost more than anything. So we do see Meg blowing a skill check, doing what Megs do best. We're going to see really good job here from the team, actually going through and busting some of these traps up when she's at range, not fully allowing her to have complete control over this middle. And it looks like she really does want to control this middle more than anything. But
yeah, because to keep in mind, right, you have your 3-gen, and it seems like our Hag is not aware that the Nia is working on that gen deep in the corner, because that's one of the areas where she set up her traps very heavily in the early game. But the thing is, since no traps had been disturbed on the way over there, she might just not have the information to know that gen needs to be defended.
So we did see this earlier. I will actually ask the tech team to take a quick second here. We do see that Fung does actually have a relic equipped. When we saw the split view, we did see an extra buff coming out, which I don't believe is in the rule set currently. That is something we do need to evaluate to call a reset on this, or a potential DQ with 4 AM here. We'll take a look and maybe have to throw it to some videos while we take a quick look into that, because we are seeing a slight additional buff here.
Yeah, and like we were saying before, controlling that middle of the map is extremely important, because in order to get to your 3-gen, the survivors have to pass through the middle of the map. But the thing is, our Hag has really had a very hard time getting anything done. We've seen a lot of traps triggered, we've seen a lot of teleports and a lot of first hits, but no hooks coming out yet, no downs.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult when you're playing Hag to try to keep control of a middle area, because the ability for your traps to be swarmed from all sides is just so much more prevalent than if you trap in a far corner where you could push people into them and they're more isolated. And yeah, we're just seeing a really tough time. The gen spread didn't work out in their favor, but this could be a corner that they choose to keep. I think another big problem here is not having any significant gen slowdown or regression. No Call of Brine, no pop or anything like that. It's going to make it a little bit tough.
Yeah, especially like you really are sort of putting all of your eggs in the baskets of Corrupt and Sloppy, right? That Noed does sort of come into play in the end game if the survivors are able to get all of the gens done. But in terms of your ability to prevent that from happening is somewhat limited.
Exactly, yeah. I think the interesting pick here, obviously seeing Noed as well, is like, as a Hag, I think Noed can be volatile, but I think also at the same time, I think that maybe it's not as effective as it would be on somebody like a Spirit or a Nurse, and it's not a bad pick, but given the other perks we've seen, like Agitation and Sloppy, it's a little bit dicey.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a build that feels a little bit risky to me. This is something that a lot of those perks that she's brought are not necessarily super consistent. Like, the Corrupt Intervention does a really good job of slowing down that early game, right? Letting you have some time to place some traps, build your web, and she did that. But the thing is that if you're not able to maintain that pressure and maintain your web, the survivors are just going to be able to tear it right apart.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is I would say this is a great Hag build if you're playing public matches, right? If you're playing against just randoms. But I think when you're playing in a tournament where people are going to play this safe, where they are going to intentionally harass your traps, find where you set the web up, I just don't think that this build necessarily flies the way that you would expect it to.
Yeah, especially because it's important to keep in mind that though most players are not really capable of doing this, it is perfectly possible to bait a Hag's traps and trigger the trap, potentially get her to teleport and swing, but not to be in range of the hit. Because the radius of detection for the traps is 4 meters, which is just slightly shorter than the actual lunge range of a killer.
Exactly.
So if you're cognizant of that range, and you're able to just barely step within that radius and trigger the trap, but immediately get your momentum moving away from it and make a little bit of distance there, the Hag can teleport and swing, but she's just not going to hit you.
Yeah, this is really interesting to see. We have 3 gens done, 1 gen at 45 and 1 at 38. We have seen several times where Hag has teleported and whiffed. A good example being their great pallet stun coming from the Fung. This is just a really tough spot to be in for BBB. A bit of a dicey pick, I think, for Hag, especially with this build, right? I think coming into this, you would maybe pick a much more commanding build or something that gave you a little bit more control. But right now, Sloppy being passive, Agitation being passive, these survivors know it, and they're taking pretty good advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, there has been absolutely zero agitation value this game. There hasn't even been a down come in.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
I mean, agitation has done literally nothing. It's been an entirely dead perk slot.
Yeah, the hit and run has been very difficult for the Hag, and obviously it's not over yet, but I don't see an easy way for Hag to make this work in their favor.
Yeah, and the thing about Hag is that as a killer who's like a 4.4 character who's entirely reliant on her traps to be able to get it down, you really aren't going to be doing a lot of individual chasing, or at least you shouldn't be.
We saw really good right there, actually, just not to cut you off, but the Meg springing the trap so that the Fung was safe was an incredible teamwork, play of teamwork there. That's exactly how you should play against a Hag, and that's what makes Hag kind of tough sometimes in these chases.
Yeah, and especially in a competitive setting where a full team of 4 survivors is coordinated like this, it can be so difficult to actually build pressure and, actually be a threat as Hag. Because you can have 1 or 2 people doing gens, you're chasing one person, and someone else is just harassing your traps, destroying your web, basically making you powerless.
Yeah. And there we see the exit gates are powered, getting a down there, but it is a pretty late down Noed being revealed, I believe, because of the hit. So this is going to be a really interesting position for the Hag to be in. I mean, it's not over quite yet, but they don't have really any traps down, and we do see somebody crouching on the totem, it looks like.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't know if the killer's going to be able to get there in time to interrupt it. I think, and no, yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
They took some time to place the trap, but the totem was already broken.
So at this point, there is potential to maybe get 1K, but with enough people on the unhook, not even Hag can necessarily secure this.
Yeah, because the thing is, the survivors can bait your traps faster than you can replace them.
And that's what we see exactly right there, the Nia doing, running through the traps, not intentionally even going for the unhook, but using the sprint burst, knowing that they're not going to get hit while they have their sprint burst. There's no way Hag can connect there. It just absolutely sort of gutting this killer. This is not the ideal... Ooh, good hit there from the Hag, though. This is definitely not an ideal situation if borrow time is in play. This is going to be really difficult. Ooh.
Yeah, and Hag is very much sort of a feast or famine killer, right? Like, once you're able to get that first down and build a bit of a web around it and make that unhook difficult and painful for the survivors, things can start to swing in your favor. But the thing is, at this point, I think it might be too late.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really good double hit on the Fung there, but you do have to wonder, is there a decisive strike in play? Is there an unbreakable? There's not been enough pressure to know anything about who has what, and really it's anyone's game. There's no good way for this to happen, and we see the Hag actually just trapping just a pentagram around this survivor, trying to keep him locked in.
Yeah, I mean, that's really so big right now, is just preventing that pickup, stalling and stalling and stalling until you can safely pick up, right, the survivor, preventing the survivors from getting their teammate off the ground, just killing time. Oh,
there it is, waiting for the sprint burst to come back in.
Yeah, I thought that might have been an unbreakable, too, because I don't know if Meg got that pickup.
Yeah, it looked like an unbreakable, and then a sprint burst allowing them just to make that distance. The curse of the 99 gate there, though, if that gate had been open, I think Meg could have just ushered her all the way out the door.
Yeah, but at this point, you have 3 healthy survivors come into body block. Oh, with the pallet break, that gets them enough distance. The Fung should be out here.
Yeah.
They should all... Yep, Adam just body blocks that corner, and everybody's just forming a train, strolling their way out that gate.
Yeah, really good play from 4AM. We do have a little bit of news on the back end. We do have a relic in play, and that is going to affect some of the stats that are sort of employed here from our survivors, which might mean that this is a rematch, which might actually bail BBB out of a really dicey situation. So we're going to have to kind of listen in and pay a little bit of attention, see how this goes. And this is the big thing if you've played DBD on other platforms. You don't know necessarily about the relics, but relics are additional additional equipables that you earn in the game, and they can drastically affect some of your stats, or they might sort of not affect your stats much. And I mean, based on that match, it's hard to say whether or not the Feng was commanding some unwieldly otherworldly powers to make that happen. It seems like the Hag was still going to struggle realistically.
Yeah, that match was going to be extremely difficult, relic or not. But rules are rules. You have to keep in mind whether the relic did in fact impact the game, and that may lead to us replaying that match.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, we did call that early. We did see that early, and so, I don't know, if we called it when we saw it, there's all kinds of factors that go into these sorts of decisions, but realistically, like I said, we looked into it, the RNG of that map, not in the Hag's favor.
Yeah, two-pallet jungle gyms at least, and potentially more that we didn't see. That's tough.
Yeah, we're seeing some old map design elements from eons ago, it feels like in some cases, where we're seeing a lot of these tiles that would have a single pallet and a single window actually have 2 pallets and a window, which against a killer like Hag can be especially painful. We saw that against Wraith as well, especially painful to get through these. And these don't exist in a lot of forms of Dead by Daylight. They were sort of obliterated more than 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there was also way back in ye olden days, there was a time where the standard jungle gym had 2 pallets and 2 windows.
Yeah, exactly.
There's actually a relic of that still in the game today. If you look at the Backwater Swamp realm, the dock there is the only remaining jungle gym in that old style that has 2 windows.
Yeah, and so it's a little bit wild to kind of see some of this stuff come back, but it definitely hindered our Hag in some ways, right? So it's not only just RNG, but it's a little bit of the structure of kind of what we're seeing. But, you know, if some of those windows had been, or some of those tiles had been an LT wall versus, you know, double jungle gyms, I think this would have been a very different match. But I think setting the trap towards the middle, trying to focus on corralling the middle into a 3-gen, I think was definitely the wrong call. You want to push your survivors toward the outside edge, have your traps out there so that there is just not a lot of place to squirm, even if you do whiff or something of that nature.
Yeah, and it was just so difficult because she started out the match with that game plan of defending that sort of main building 3-gen, right? You have that gen up top, you have the 2 gens on either side, you have the gen in front, which she got to eventually. Yeah. But the thing is that unless you're actually able to pressure survivors in that area where you've set up those traps and started to build your web, they're just not going to trigger the traps. Why would they? They're going to sit on gens. Yeah,
exactly. That's the big thing about Hag, and even Trapper to some degree, is there's a mentality of you need to set up, but then you need to push them into the setup. If you allow it to just passively exist, either nothing happens or they stumble upon it and then they find sort of the thread and start pulling at it until the entire thing sort of unravels and wastes all of your time. So
yeah, I mean, I know my favorite thing to do when I'm playing Survivor against a Hag is I just spend the entire game harassing her because, you know, I can't trust my teammates to understand the counterplay to Hag because you see them so infrequently, right?
Right, yeah.
It's just not reasonable to expect an average casual player who hops on for a couple of games once or twice a week, you know, which is realistically the majority of your solo queue teammates.
Yeah.
It's kind of unrealistic to expect them to understand the nuances of, like, drawing the killer's attention, how to properly bait a trap, and like how to like sort of draw her away from where she wants to be and prevent her from using her time effectively.
You know, and what's interesting to remark about just is that, like, this is an older form of Hag, just barely, but this is a form of Hag where survivors can run up and just trigger the trap, right?
Yeah, they don't have the ability to wipe away that trap on the ground.
Exactly. More modern versions of Hag, actually you walk up and you have to press and hold a button and it wipes it away, and it makes it a little bit more fair for that killer, as we saw in this one, the ability to run in and just completely circumnavigate the punishment, really, for hindering that capability. It's a bit of a different dynamic. So to come in here with Hag, you have to be very confident. You have to really understand the map. And I'm not saying our Hag didn't, but they definitely seem to struggle with knowing where to put those traps and where to push.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, I feel that if anything, the addition of the ability, like say, you know, in a hypothetical world where you can wipe away a Hag's traps, which is not the one we're living in today here. You know, I find that almost to be more of a nerf to the Hag than anything else, because before, you know, with this version of Hag that we have, it's impossible to get rid of a trap without potentially allowing her to punish you. Whereas with the ability to wipe away the trap, yes, you may invest a little bit of additional time, but you completely prevent her ability to actually turn her attention to that. And in certain situations, like say she's playing territorially around a hook, you may not have that extra time, and she may be able to punish you with that. But on the whole, in terms of the situation we see, where people are constantly disarming traps and like getting hit, in a world where you don't have the threat of a hit for disarming that trap, it kind of defangs that web a little bit.
A little bit. There's definitely some positives. There's definitely some negatives. I would say probably net positive in most situations that you would kind of consider. But yeah, if you leave your traps entirely unattended or completely in different parts of the map, yeah, which maybe you kind of deserve that a little bit, right? You deserve kind of seeing that. So we are going to take a quick break. We do have to take a look at the sort of playback behind the scenes, kind of figure out what happened last match and figure out how we're going to progress going forward. So thank you guys for being here. Give us a little bit of a moment, get some water, and we'll be right back with you. And we're back. We've had an interesting set of deliberations and things revealed.
Yeah, it's been an eventful couple of minutes.
Yeah, so really just to recap what happened, BBB versus 4AM, really going into it, BBB actually was the first infraction bringing a relic on their Spirit at Wrecker's Yard. And so the relic that was brought on the Fung in our Cole Tower match, kind of they cancel out. Neither of the teams really complained about it. It was more us being aware of the rules.
Yeah, and since they were two infractions of the same type, they effectively are the ruling that has been made in the background here is that those two infractions will just cancel each other out.
Now, what that does also mean is that last match, the definitive match, 4AM versus BBB.
Hag on Cole Tower.
Yeah, so the match there is just a blowout, and that kind of will end the series here. BBB taking a loss that is 11-3 in favor of 4AM moving forward. We did offer to allow BBB to just play the last match, but they have gracefully declined.
Yeah,
and
as the point differential was significant enough that even if they won basically perfectly, even if they played a perfect game,
the 11-8,
yeah, it wouldn't change the outcome.
No, yeah. So our bracket for the rest of the weekend is as follows. We're going to be seeing RSK versus End, which is, I think it's going to be interesting. I think RSK putting up a really good fight today. I don't remember what Endgame really looks like.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen them. The last time we saw them was Saturday?
Yeah.
Because we played losers on Sunday. I think.
Time's a construct.
It's been a long time.
And then we're seeing in the losers 4AM versus Rarity, which are both really, really strong teams. Rarity starting from all the way back in the base of losers bracket there. So we're going to be looking at some of that tomorrow. Going to be exciting stuff. Remember, there's going to be giveaways in the chat. There are going to be blood point codes and much, much more. So be sure you guys kind of tune in, take a look for some of that stuff. We are going to leave you guys with some wonderful replays from today's matches. We appreciate you. I appreciate you guys coming out. We covered everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a phenomenal day. We talked about the expectations for next week.
Yeah.
Again, thank you all so much for spending today with us. It has been a phenomenal tournament day. A little bit rocky at times, but has been entertaining nonetheless.
Yeah.
It has been our pleasure to be here with you today. And we are so excited for the next couple of days of this Dead by Daylight Mobile Knights of Terror tournament.
Yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Hex Ruin. Hex Ruin is already out of play. It's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's the yoink coming from our nurse. What an incredible...
Tinkerer going off on that gen in the corner that was just visited. I believe that's the Kate who's working on it.
And
they get a 1-to-1 increase in the amount of progress.
Oh,
caught not wannabe. And also recognizing from the Spirit that the Adam has been hooked already and the Nia hasn't, which makes him the priority target. Very, very oh no, Meg, don't do it.
Oh, Meg,
you
are...
Meg, the risk. Think of the risk. Oh, no.
No, it doesn't. So
I think our killer's happy to...
What are they doing?
No.
4 a.m.
Oh, no.
Hello. And the fact that they are rushing in here is absolutely...
As quickly as possible, rather than farming his power. Dead Hard?
Dead Hard.
Yeah,
great Dead Hard from the Dwight. Extra pallet drop there.
That is still a tile for her to play, whereas that Dwight just has nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And then coming back with his ability, knowing that these windows...
Ooh, good read. He's way back. Okay, I think maybe he does know where Dwight is, and he's playing around that bleed out bar.
Wow, incredible pickup.
But I don't know how I feel about that, considering I don't know how I feel about the hit and run, considering the med kits on these survivors, that everybody coming in with their way into that corner to start working on that gen again. Oh no.
She didn't see the pallet break, I guess.
Yeah. The primary perk that's defending these gens is going to be Call of Brian effectively by itself for the majority of the time, and the Dead Hard coming out.
Good down there. They're going to have to wait this out, be very patient here. Could be a Dead Hard for the window. Do they get the hit, though? That's a hit. Good job. Exactly. Any of the gens that, like, Kate would have been on, and this is going to be interesting. Really keeping in touch and really trying to continue gripping at this. Great hit there. Good lord.
Yeah. And even just I see he does have a borrowed time equipped, so a Deliverance would not surprise me in the slightest. Oh, baiting out the Dead Hard.
Really?
And we are going to... Oh. That you see good Spirit players do is that they're watching the ground in front of them as they're phasing. They're looking for that grass moving, right? To try and guarantee the exact wall. The Meg recognizes what the Spirit is doing and doubles back just in time. Ooh, maybe the Meg recognizing maybe potentially. Yeah, and especially with only 2 tokens available for No Way Out, that's going to be 36 seconds of the exit gates blocked. So I don't know if they have time. I mean, they can make their way back across the map, try and maybe make something happen here. Oh, wait.
Ooh,
wow.
The additional hit.